staff, or underwriters.
Good evening. I'm Marcellina Ventura-Douglas, radio news reporter for the WTJX NewsFeed on WTJX FM 93.1. Welcome to our live coverage of Governor Albert Bryan Jr.'s 8th State of the Territory address. We're coming to you from our St. Thomas studio as the governor prepares to address the 36th legislature of the Virgin Islands at the Earl B. Lotley Legislative Hall. This marks the final State of the Territory address of the Governor Bryan's time in office. He's expected to account for his administration's record and to address issues ranging from healthcare modernization and WAPA reliability to the execution phase of the territory's recovery and rebuild. Stay with us after the speech for reaction from members of the 36th legislature and from you, our viewing audience. Joining me in the studio tonight is a diverse panel ready to break down what the governor says and what it all means for our community. Usie Richards is a former senator from St. Croix District who served 5 terms in the legislature, including time as Senate President. Kurt Marsh Jr. is an architectural engineer, woodworker, and community activist from St. John. He co-founded and serves as vice president of St. Janko, the St. John Heritage Collective, and currently chairs the Virgin Islands Historic Preservation Commission. Conn Davis II is a local business owner on St. Thomas, investment banker, and investor. He is actively involved with a number of nonprofits and public boards in the territory. And Kye Walker is a Crucian attorney and the founder and managing partner of Walker Legal. She has served in leadership and advisory roles on several boards and community organizations across the territory. And she's joining us tonight as the governor's representative on the panel. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for being here.
Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Marcellina.
All right. And to keep things comfortable, everyone, and to a bit conversational, I'll be addressing everyone by their first names, okay? All right. So let's start with getting a sense of what everyone will be listening to for the governor's speech. Usie, I want to ask, what's one main issue that you're hoping to hear from the governor this evening?
Well, not just from Governor Bryan, but I think the State of the Territory address should really address the state of our finances. I think there's a lot of concern in regards to existing revenues, disbursement, and the ability to ensure that they are being utilized for the infrastructure and the services required by the people of the Virgin Islands.
Okay. I want to stay on this side of the table. Conn, what is something that you're hoping to hear from the governor?
I'd agree in terms of the overall economy initiatives, economic developments, always kind of front of mind for the whole public and everybody that's involved, as well as infrastructure, both ongoing projects and projects that are in the pipeline.
Okay. Now, moving over, Kurt, I want to hear what you want to hear from the governor this evening.
I think the territory at large gets some pretty consistent coverage and assistance, and so I'm going to focus on St. John. I think St. Johnians are experiencing rapid displacement unlike any of the other 2 larger islands, and currently there are 3,000 housing units slated to be built across the territory, but 0 are on St. John. So I'm curious as to whether he'll address that tonight or not.
Okay. Now, Kye, I know you might be the governor's representative, but it's also important for you. What is something that you're hoping to hear the governor address?
You know, this is his last State of the Territory address, but he's got a little under a year left, Marcellina. So what I want to hear about tonight is what he has planned for the remainder of his term. What do we have to look forward to from the governor?
Okay. All right. Now, the biggest headline of the past year were the criminal convictions of 3 former members of Governor Bryan's cabinet. Former Police Commissioner Sheree Martinez and former Management and Budget Director Jennifer O'Neill were found guilty last month on all counts in a federal corruption case tied to a convicted con man turned state witness David Whitaker. And just last week, former Sports Park and Recreation Commissioner Calvert White was sentenced to 5 years in prison after being convicted by a jury last summer in a separate bribery scheme that also involved Whitaker. Since taking office in 2019, Governor Bryan has repeatedly spoken out against corruption in public office and has advocated for more funding for a white-collar crime unit. Here's a look back at what the governor has said, including his comments following White's conviction.
Many in our community are quick to raise the specter of overwhelming public corruption within the government. And while there have been many prominent cases of public corruption, it has been our experience thus far that is more speculation than truth. We must continue prosecuting these cases and win back the public's trust, which is why we included in the fiscal year 2020 budget funding to reinstate the white-collar crime unit. It is also why, even after the legislature's rejection of it, we have requested a supplement to the budget to reconstitute this unit within the Department of Justice. Under the Brian Roach administration, all crime, especially public corruption, is put on notice. That is why I lobbied so strong for the legislature to fund the white-collar crime unit.
The White-Collar Crime and Public Corruption Unit is staffed by its chief, who is also my St. Croix deputy, and who is assisted by a Criminal Division Assistant Attorney General in St. Thomas, who also handles a general criminal caseload. As in past budget presentations, we request assistance to fully staff this division with an additional full-time prosecutor and a forensic accountant or financial crime analyst.
This year, our community has been confronted with painful truth as accusations of corruption have shaken both the private and the public sectors. I've come to a sobering reality. No policy, no procedure, no code of conduct can entirely guard against human weakness. I have signed into existence a new comprehensive code of ethics. Corruption, whether it manifests itself as theft, fraud, or the misappropriations of funds, is a cancer that threatens the very lifeblood of our community. The conviction of someone who once held a position of public trust is a painful reminder that public service is a sacred responsibility. Justice has been served. We will continue to maintain that our administration is the most transparent in the history of the Virgin Islands. But of course, we cannot be everywhere and watch everybody.
Conn, I want to go to you first. In the governor's 2020 State of the Territory address, he talked about reinstating a white-collar crime unit and making corruption a priority. Now, today, the Justice Department does have that white-collar crime unit and public corruption unit that the Attorney General did describe as thinly staffed during that budget hearing. In practical terms, what do you think the legislature and the executive branch need to do to truly show that this is a priority that they're addressing?
Well, I think you have to properly staff it, you got to properly fund it, and you have to be cognizant of where we are today. We've got billions of dollars of projects that are going to be ongoing, far more than we would have under a normal 25, 30, 50-year period. So if that's an initiative, you have to staff and you have to deal with the reality that you're going to be looking at an infinite amount of documents, RFPs, projects, bids that you're not normally staffed for. So I think the amount of money that's in the territory and will be in the territory will require a great amount of scrutiny.
Yeah. Now, Usie, being in the legislature, this is something, of course, that has come up in the past. Senate Vice President Kenneth Gittens introduced Bill number 35-0027. That's the Virgin Islands Commission on Ethics and Conflicts of Interest Act, to create an independent commission to review ethical complaints that involving public officials. Now, the bill stalled in committee this past summer after lawmakers raised questions about who would handle the investigations and how it would work with existing agencies and how it would be funding. What does it signal to you and to the larger public that, we're having this sort of difficulty in kind of moving this forward?
Well, excuse me, long time I know that it has in the past been in existence the Commission on Ethics and Conflict of Interest. I do recall it because it had required individuals in leadership position in government from commissioners. I completed a form when I was a member of the Virgin Islands Casino Control Commission, and I was somewhat perturbed, if I could utilize that adjective, of the non-existence and functioning of an entity that was already established by law. I had looked forward to hear and to listen to the proposals shared by Senator Gittins to find out what type of teeth they was going to put in the tiger's mouth. I think what we've had in the past was a toothless tiger. And I think that this is something that is necessary outside of the staffing and funding of a white-collar unit within Department of Justice.
Yeah. Okay. Kurt, now we see 3 agency heads, having been convicted on federal corruption charges, and that, of course, raises alarms across the board. But we're seeing this specifically from the federal side, not the local side. Do you think that this indicates that we need to be taking a closer look, Inspector General, audits, contracts, other things, especially when it comes to local funds, and outside of these federal dollars? Should we start seeing maybe possibly more scrutiny on the local end and possibly even seeing charges on the local side?
I think I'm glad that you directed that question to me, because that was going to be my response. It's disappointing that these convictions are coming from the federal level. I think we need to practice greater accountability amongst ourselves, and so that involves shoring up the white-collar unit, but also taking audits seriously. We have an Inspector General sometimes whose reports are not paid attention to and carried with the weight that they should be carried with, and so I think we need to figure out what mechanisms look like, or revamping or developing new mechanisms to address these things looks like, and I think there's a certain level of accountability outside of political appointments and those spaces where persons can otherwise, do what they want without punity locally. I think we need to figure out how to address that, and that involves a certain level of public trust as well being rebuilt.
Yeah. Now, Kye, you and I actually spoke about this back on Comes with the Territory following the convictions of former Housing Finance Authority COO Darren Richardson. And we have those pending federal charges against former education official Davidson Charlemagne that is upcoming. Do these cases suggest a broader problem in how government contracts tied to federal funds are being managed?
Well, not necessarily, because there's a ton of federal regulations and compliance that must be met. And we also have to remember that individuals are innocent till proven guilty. So Mr. Charlemagne has not been established as guilty. Now, with that, while funding DOJ and establishing a white-collar criminal unit is a good idea, I think we also need to be more proactive. We live in a very small community where lines get blurred. Some people may not understand what corruption looks like. When you're talking about the commissioners, that's a higher level, but you could have lower level corruption that people just don't understand is corruption. So I think when you have new cabinet members, you have people entering government, there should be some sort of training for ethics and corruption, how to spot it, how to avoid it, how to report it. And I think we will start to see less instances of this conduct.
Usie, having been a former lawmaker, what do you think the executive and the legislative branch need to do in order to collectively build back public trust?
The most important thing, at least in my mind, and I wanted to follow up on the statement made by Attorney Walker, the subject matter that there is in existence a process of check and balance within government. I think that the strict following of these procedures have been set aside by various departments and agencies, things that should be checked by the Department of Property and Procurement, the reports, as mentioned by Mr. Marsh, that comes out of the Inspector General, reviewing them, and you see how you are able to tighten and focus on the administrative process that secure the expenditure of the finances of government. So in that context, I think the check and balance system really not only needs to strengthen, but needs to be enforced from the top level of each department and agency down to the importance to each one of the employees who are at the lower level that works on behalf of the people.
Now, I want to shift to an issue Governor Bryan has turned to again and again since taking office, and that's WAPA. From warnings about vulnerability and management to promises to fix the utility to the commissioning of new generators, WAPA has been a recurring theme in Governor Bryan's State of the Territory address. Let's take a look back.
The Virgin Islands Water and Power Authority remains the most vulnerable of our assets. WAPA's fiscal affairs can only be characterized as abysmal. Regrettably, WAPA is still plagued with management inefficiencies, and way too many of them. WAPA has a tremendous opportunity to transform itself if it can only overcome its immediate challenges. As I campaigned for re-election last year, I tried my best to avoid making any bold pronouncements to solve issues that were beyond my direct control. The one exception to that, though, was WAPA. I have committed to fixing the issues of WAPA within my second term. We have already begun the mission of ushering in an energy revolution with WAPA. We will lay a solid foundation this year to get us there. Earlier this month, we celebrated the long-awaited unveiling of the Marcellina generators for St. Thomas and St. John. The project added 36 megawatts of power to the grid, along with 9 megawatts of battery power. After an almost 15-year effort, we now have smaller, more efficient generators running online at the Randolph-Harley Power Plant. It has been a long and challenging and a graying road, but we are finally turning the corner now and transforming WAPA into a renewable company. This past December, we cut the ribbon on 16 megawatts of pure solar power and battery backup in St. Croix. The investments we are making and the hard work we're doing, they're paying off.
Now, in Governor Bryan's 2023 State of the Territory address, he declared, quote, "I have committed to fixing the issues of WAPA within my second term," end quote. Mr. Marsh, I see you just picked up your glass to drink, but I want to ask you, should the governor be commended, for making such a bold move, deciding to put this on his shoulder, on his responsibility, rather than the authority itself? And what does fixing WAPA actually mean for residents?
WAPA is a loaded subject, and I think we could commend ODR and the administration for the work that is being done to see through the projects that are underway. But I still think there's a lack of vision and creative problem solving. I think this idea that we're scraping virgin land to put up solar panels that could be blown away in storms, I think we're kind of working backwards because technology is moving in other ways. And there's any number of additional solutions to fixing our energy production woes. And I don't think that virgin land, especially in a place that has a finite land resource, being scraped for solar panels is the result or the solution.
And
I also think increasing the grid capacity by spreading it out is also a solution. St. John, if everyone isn't aware, is still connected to St. Thomas by an undersea cable.
Yes.
And that is not adequate for life in 2025, 26.
Yeah. Now, Kye, I want to ask, what do you think one immediate issue at WAPA that really has to be fixed for residents to be able to see a difference?
You know, that's a good question. And thus far, in addition to the solar panels that Mr. Marsh mentioned, we also have the purchase of the VTOL facility, right? We have the Marcellina generator. So what you have is WAPA working on different projects at the same time with the vision for the future. I think that WAPA also gets caught up in a lot of bureaucracy. You've got a WAPA board, you've got a PSC, you've got a legislature. And I think the bureaucracy itself takes away from WAPA's ability to fully function. So if there's one thing I'd like to see change with WAPA right away, in addition to all the projects that are underway, is to remove one or two of those layers of bureaucracy that's over WAPA and dictating to WAPA what it should do. If WAPA has a board, it doesn't need the PSC, and that's my...
Okay. All right, so I want to pause for a minute. We want to go to the legislature so that we can hear the prayer coming in.
Many blessings that we have received. We pray that your blessings will be with our governor and all those that lead in this territory. We pray, oh God, for those that are going through difficult times. Lord, may your Holy Spirit comfort them. May your blessings be upon these islands and upon all of us who dwell. Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen.
Please be seated. Thank you, Father Abraham. We'll now stand in recess for 5 minutes.
All right. And while the legislature is in recess, we're going to come back to the issue of WAPA. Conn, you're a St. Thomas resident. You experienced that outage just this week, actually, or last week. So, you know, this was thousands of residents, you know, that were left without power once again, due to that well-known phrase of loss of generation. What should the governor say in his speech tonight, you know, that shows he understands the public's frustrations with ongoing outages and the rotations, and even with these new generators coming online and the millions of dollars that are going into these solar projects and these recovery projects that are supposed to help the grid?
Well, I think it's the elephant in the room for many people, and many people in the private sector, many people, everyone's highly sensitive to what happens at WAPA on a daily basis, whether it be getting ready your kids ready for school, whether it be operating your business, looking at the bill at the end of the month. So I think communicating on this issue, not just what we're dealing with now, but what we can anticipate to come from the projects, is important, because there is a lot of frustration on a daily basis. And it's a legacy issue that didn't come to its position of where it is overnight, but I think the rubber's got to meet the road for the population in terms of rates, as well as affordable and consistent power. I mean, that's the role of a municipal utility, is to provide stable power at a reasonable rate. Yeah. It's a non-profit entity, so that's really what they're there for.
Yeah. Now, Usie, do you think WAPA's problems can still be fixed, or, you know, within its current structure? Or do you think the territory needs to start looking at other options, like Mr. Marsh just suggested?
I am in agreement with Mr. Marsh's statement relative to alternative mechanisms for generating power for the people of the Virgin Islands. I was a little taken aback because I got lost with the statements by Kye in regards to we need to make a choice and a decision of whether or not we want to keep a board or we should keep Public Service Commission. I think we are suffering from the management of a number of boards throughout the territory. In this case, the Water and Power Authority board is a institution that seems to be not quite functional in regards to its responsibility oversight and working with the CEO of the Water and Power Authority. There's no jurisdiction in any state, county, throughout the United States that the Public Service Commission, by whatever name it goes, is non-existent, because it is responsible for ensuring that certain services that should be provided to the public is properly regulated. And so I see a need to keep a Public Service Commission. I question the need for the Water and Power Authority Board. We're suffering from a dilemma with the management of boards of certain institutions. We could run over to the hospital corporation board, from governing the Wang Louis Hospital to the Roy Lester Snyder Hospital to the Myra Keaton Smith facility over in St. John. And I just came from a time where the administrators were put in place and boards were non-existent, and so that the buck stopped somewhere other than sitting around this conference table or room listening to board members opine on what they think should be done.
All right. Now, let's turn now to one of the longest running capital projects in the territory. It's been promised, anticipated, and revisited in Governor Bryan's State of the Territory addresses over the years, and those of you on St. Croix know exactly what it is that I'm talking about. And it remains unfinished to this day. Let's take a look.
In the last transition, the construction of the Polly Joseph was delayed along with several other projects. This cannot and will not continue.
Without question, our administration remains committed to the renovation of the Paul E. Joseph Stadium in Frederiksted. And we anticipate that the long-awaited completion will happen within the next 12 months. The Paul E. Joseph Stadium in Frederiksted. Is also nearing completion. While we continue to feel exasperated ain't a word, with the current contractor, we can finally see the end of the tunnel. It's hazy for the Paul E. Joseph Stadium project.
The total project cost to date is $25,722,898.54, with a remaining balance of $6,401,101.46. This total includes payments made in accordance with the original contract and the 2 supplemental contracts issued. Combined, the total contract value is approximately $32.124 million. As of our last project meeting with the contractor, the most recent schedule calls for a substantial completion date of December 25th, 2025.
All right, so I'm going to go to my fellow Westman, Mr. Usie Richards. Back in July, we were supposed to get a Christmas gift because the Department of Public Works said that Polly Joseph would be completed by Christmas of 2025. Since then, there's been no public update on a completed date or opening. Now, for you, as a born and bred Crucian, what are some of the conversations that you're hearing from your local, residents, about the project?
Well, I don't want to be passé with your question, but I left the legislature in January of 2013. And prior to leaving the legislature, I was the sponsor of a legislation that appropriated the first set of monies to repair the existing structure of the Paul E. Joseph Stadium, and then the Public Finance Authority under the then Governor DeYoung administration went to the bond market and floated money, and we had an additional project that was added, which was a permanent site for the Festival Village on the island St. Croix. Is disheartening and frustrating to know that we're now in 2026.
Yes.
That what we see today as a result of these large investments, and this is possibly one of the good example of a case against a contractor that has abused the public trust, misused public funds,
yes,
and leave us with a facility that doesn't meet the basic requirements and specifications of a baseball facility that we was expecting to have.
Yes. Kye, I want to go back over to you, my fellow Crujan. Do you think Governor Bryan needs to address Polly Joseph in his State of the Territory address this evening? I think it's something that he did bring up, and he spoke about it and committed to it. You know, ultimately, is it reasonable for him for people to expect him to mention it?
The Polly Joseph Stadium and I agree with Usie completely. This is a prime example of needing to look into the contractor. Because it has been mentioned over the years, I would have to agree that it should be some mention, some status update, assuming one is available. At the end of the day, the Polly Joseph Stadium is an albatross in more ways than one, and it hasn't even been constructed. And I'm not from Frederiksted, I'm from Christiansted, so I'm Frederiksted adjacent, right? But the amount of money that has been invested into this project without there being any visible physical structure warrants at least an investigation, because it seems that it was flawed from inception, and that has been haunting the execution of the project since then. I think Governor Bryan and his administration are well-intended, but they have inherited this albatross of a project.
All right, so I do want to take a pause right there, because we do have Governor Bryan, who is arriving outside of the legislature building. But before he begins to walk in, I want to ask you, Kurt, you know, at this point, I know while, you know, you might be over on the island of St. John, I'm sure you've been hearing about the Polly Joseph Stadium as well, too. Do you think that the governor will get an opportunity to cut the ribbon for the Polly Joseph before he leaves the office?
Well, considering considering the context of the project, I would sure hope so. And not as a means to take credit or just to celebrate another accomplishment, but because, yes, this has been an exhausting process for the people of St. Croix. And I think equity in any of this is important for the community.
Yeah. Conn, you think the governor will have an opportunity to cut that ribbon?
I don't have any inside information on where that project's at, but what I would say is that most larger scale projects, and I've been involved with project finance for a long time, you generally have bonded or bondable contractors and firm fixed prices with completion guarantees. So you effectively have an insurance product similar to what we ran into with Vitol years ago, and that's part of the agreement.
Yeah.
And if it's not done, you pay penalties.
All righty. Now I want to go back now to the legislature. We see here, that is not the governor walking in. We see Senate Majority Leader Kurt Viale walking in, and I believe that is the Delegate to Congress, Stacey Plaskett, that is coming in and greeting members of the 36th legislature as she prepares to sit down as well too. Coming up and greeting Senator Carla Joseph, and we also see the Senator at Large, Angel Volquez Jr. and Senator DeGraff. All right, and as the delegate prepares to greet the Secretary of the Legislature and the Senate President, I believe she will take her seat, and after that we will see the Lieutenant Governor come in. Now, while we are watching, Usie, when you recall your State of the Territories, your time in the law and the legislature, you know, what is the atmosphere like inside of the legislature waiting for the governor, for the Lieutenant Governor and members of his cabinet to come in?
Why are you putting me on the spot to laugh? Because I'm laughing to myself because when you say what is the atmosphere is like, in the context of the members of the legislative body, I've been a spectator as a Senate staffer to State of Territory address, and I've been to State of Territory address as a member of the legislature. 9 out of 10 times, senators are sitting there saying to themselves, I wonder what the governor going to tell we tonight that we haven't heard about over the past 3 or 4 years. And what was so coincidental, I was looking at the 2024 State of the Territory address.
Yes.
And there was a discussion where the governor was saying, well, in 2024, we're now in 2026. Well, the streets in Frederick specifically King, Queen, and Strand, they're going to be repaired. And up to yesterday, I drive down there to use the ATM, and it's still hitting the same. And this is the place. This is the place where the tourists.
Yes.
That we so much promote ourselves to. The cruise ships come in on Strand Street, and that hasn't been completed. He spoke about the Ethel McIntosh
Memorial Drive,
which is some people know as, or formerly known as Mahogany Road. And that in 2024, the contract was being awarded, and we're here in 2026, and very little progress on that. And so I think that senators feel frustrated, particularly when they pass legislation, appropriate sums of money, and projects are not being moved on in an expeditious manner.
Yeah. Now, we see the governor coming into the, getting ready to make his way into the chambers of the legislature right now, as we are waiting for him to make his remarks. In the meantime, Usie, you mentioned the hospitals in the territory, earlier as some of the remarks that you want to hear. The territory has been under pressure, and this month we heard from hospital officials and lawmakers about full emergency rooms and worsening conditions. What can the governor say in his speech tonight that would reassure the public that the state of the hospital care the state of hospital care in the territory?
Well, it's not a sole responsibility of the governor.
Yeah.
I recall when Senator Lorraine Berry introduced the legislation for the creation of the Hospital Corporation Act, and having served 17 years in the Department of Health, we had a functional hospital, and we just had the hospital administrator and a deputy commissioner territory-wide in the late Lieutenant Colonel Harmon Richardson. We had hospital administration, like the late was Lloyd from Gallows Bay that was administering the then Charles Howard Hospital, and it was under one functional roof. Now we have a board again, yes. And that's why I mentioned it, that seems to not be able to manage efficiently in the selections of CEO, CFO, the conduct of the business of the hospital. As a healthcare professional, by training, it's frightening. And I think the people of the territory are really concerned that I believe up to last week, there were hospital employees that didn't receive the bi-weekly
delay
check.
In their payment.
So that's frightening.
Now, on St. John, residents, now they're still relying on temporary facilities at the Myra Keating Smith Community Health Center because a permanent clinic rebuild underway, it might be underway, but it's not finished. It hasn't started. What should the governor say in his speech tonight to reassure residents on St. John specifically, that permanent health care remains a priority? What would you like to hear him commit to?
Well, I'm assuming that they're going to mention that the project is a part of a bundle that's currently out for bid.
All right. I'm so sorry, Kurt. Will we see everyone standing? So that means the governor is about to make his way into the legislature right now. see the governor greeting members of the legislature, Senator Franklin Johnson, Senator Alma Francis Heiliger, as he makes his way over to greet his former St. Thomas Administrator, Avery Lewis, now Secretary of the 36th Legislature, greeting the delegate to Congress, Stacey Plaskett, and now greeting the Senate President, Milton Potter. Giving his greetings to his Lieutenant Governor, Tregenza Roach. As he prepares to give his final and 8th State of the Territory address to members of the legislature and to the residents of the Virgin Islands.
Good evening. Please be seated. Father Anthony Abraham, Lieutenant Governor Tregenza A. Roach, Senate President Milton E. Potter and the members of the 36th Legislature, Chief Justice Reese S. Hodge and the Justices of the Supreme Court, Presiding Judge Jessica Gallivan and the Judges of the Superior Court, Delegate to Congress Stacey Plaskett, and Chief Judge Robert Malloy and Judges of the District Court, members of my cabinet and agency heads, members of my staff, State Chair of the Democratic Party, Carolyn Burke, distinguished guests, and my fellow Virgin Islanders, Sumi and Rosie, good night. Before I start, I want to give a shout out to the kitchen staff down at Olamulla, who I spent some time with today, and say a thank you to all hardworking government workers that struggle every day through a lot of hard times. But tonight, as your governor, I stand with gratitude for the people who made this work possible. Reverence for the institutions that keep our democracy strong, and an unshakable confidence that our future is bright. Throughout our 7-year journey, I've gained inspiration from the greatest leadership manual in creation. Proverbs 3, 5, and 6 remind us to trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not unto thine own understanding. In all thine ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy paths. The Most High has guided us safely through another year with an abundance of blessings and without any major disasters or emergencies. For that, we must all give pause, give thanks, and give praise for those blessings. These Virgin Islands are built on the shoulders of many great individuals. This last year, we lost several of our bricklayers of our spiritual and culture. Javille Lawson, Javon Uncle Man Sasso, Louis B. Taylor Jr., Austin Edgy Christian, and attorney Ezart Winter Sr. I'm especially bereaved from the loss of my good friend Yvonne Galabert and the good work she'd done with the Cancer Society. We pledge to keep their legacies alive in the way we live, create, and care for one another. In that same spirit of gratitude and remembrance, join me in honoring our service members of the Virgin Islands Army and Air National Guard. Airmen and soldiers continue to demonstrate their competence and readiness. This year, the United States Armed Forces once again showed that the Virgin Islands is the ideal home away from home. And that did not happen by chance. My administration leaned in and extended a clear invitation and worked closely with our federal and military partners to make sure that their visits were relaxing and safe. And as a result, the USS Gerald R. Ford and the Iwo Jima once again made several port calls to Crown Bay and Frederiksted. Our small businesses, taxi drivers, and tour operators can attest that economically it was a huge win. So thank you to all Virgin Islanders for showing them your hospitality on every single visit. In our commitment to service for both the active and inactive, last year we worked to expand access to care, improve the navigation of claims processing, and provide non-service connected veterans on St. Croix with no-cost airfare to medical appointments. Special thanks to Director Patrick Farrell and the Office of Veteran Affairs for continuing to champion this good work. Over the past year, I chose to venture across oceans, and yes, continents, and get connected from whence we came. This was a transformative experience that all Virgin Islanders should experience at least once in their lifetime, and I am better for it. And this relationship with our kinfolk in West Africa should be nurtured. I would like to acknowledge the members of the West Africa delegation who are in our territory this week with us. With us tonight is the CEO from the Ghana Tourism Authority, Maame Efwa Wadeyeto, and Prince Anthony Bart. As your governor, my purpose has been simple: to deliver real progress for the Virgin Islands. I've tried to do that by being honest about our challenges, keeping my word, and making sure every part of your government treats Virgin Islanders with respect. I focus on growing our revenues by strengthening our economy and tourism, attracting new investments, securing federal support, and making sure that we collect what we are owed. Together, we have used those revenues to steady our government, pay long overdue bills, shore up our retirement system, and provide the best quality of life for Virgin Islanders and our guests that we can afford. My goal has always been to take the wisdom of our elders and the vision of our team and turn it into action so that progress would outlast me or any single administration. Tonight in this chamber, I will deliver my final State of the Territory address. It is a moment to take stock, speak with candor, and I'll update you on the journey we have been on over the last 7 years. I won't be brief by any standards, but I will be clear, because the stakes are too high for anything less. When I stood before you last year, we were progressing in the throes of great change. I reminded you of where we started together: record high unemployment, a pension system on the brink, deteriorating infrastructure, and staggering unpaid obligations. I reported that change was finally taking place. Tourism was surging. Royal Caribbean was bringing more cruise passengers to St. Croix. $22.5 billion had been pledged to restore our islands, and we launched Rebuild USVI to turn long-promised schools into active projects. In every year of this administration, though, we have faced adversity that tested our resolves and the plans that we've laid. And the past year was no different. In many ways, 2025 brought some of the most difficult moments, not because we lost our way, but because the world around us shifted under our feet, even as we were trekking forward. Behind every ribbon cutting and groundbreaking, we were constantly navigating forces beyond and within our shores that threatened to slow or derail the work we were doing. Hence, I must be forthright and contextualize the challenges we faced in the last year and how we, together, chose to make them. Last year, I brought a change in leadership in Washington, D.C., from our good friend President Biden to President Trump. For a territory of our side that depends on strong federal partnership, that kind of transition is never just politics on television. It is a real-time shift in priorities, policies, and yes, relationships. Programs we had carefully aligned with federal rules and expectations suddenly required renewed defense and fresh advocacy. We had to reassess, realign, and move quickly to keep pace with the executive actions and a changing federal landscape. My team and I found ourselves back in old rooms with new decision makers, making sure the Virgin Islands were not treated as an afterthought. It is not about my personal feelings, political feelings. Our mission is simple: it's to secure the future of this territory, no matter who sits in Congress or the Oval Office. At the same time, changes in federal trade policies and new tariff pressures created a real sense of uncertainty. Trade and tariff shifts may sound abstract, but for us, they affect everything from the cost of materials and fuel to the development of our ports and our tourism economy. Every single price increase lands heavy on our shores. This meant we had to fight to make sure that the cost of national decisions did not disproportionately impact Virgin Islanders. Our people simply cannot afford it. This past year, Delegate Plaskett and I confronted federal proposal to impose steep maritime fees on Chinese-built vessels. fees that could have disrupted our supply chain and inflated costs on everything from building supplies to groceries. But after our aggressive efforts, lobbying, and working with the Trump administration, ultimately, they exempted the Virgin Islands from these increased fees. We would like to thank the delegate and our friends at Tropical who are leading this team effort that produced results for our people. We also faced uncertainty of the longest federal government shutdown in our nation history. When Washington stopped, the needs of our people did not. Families still needed food assistance, seniors still needed access to health care, and our government still had to operate whether programs had federal funding or not. And while many in this nation stood in lines at food banks, or unfortunately just went hungry, we ran the checks and fed our people. Our challenges continued as our children's futures were put at risk when federal government forces prematurely withdrew $34 million in education stabilizations grants. We huddled, strategized, and responded. We secured a meeting with the United States Secretary of Education, and that swift action and firm leadership led to the reversal of the decision, allowing essential programs to proceed and vendors to be provided who provided goods and services to be paid. On top of that, our ongoing work to stabilize and transform the energy grid, particularly in St. Thomas St. John District, did not go exactly as we expected. We experienced setbacks that contributed to rotating power outages and costly surges that damaged the equipment of residents and businesses alike. I know the frustration because I simply hear it everywhere I go. I hear it from the small businesses that lose inventory, the family that's sitting in the heat, and the students that are studying by flashlight. And when the power goes out, everyone's patience goes out with it. But over the course of this administration, we have learned from our trials that transformation is never a straight line, and that some of the pain is felt even as the improvements are being made. And if that was not enough, ransomware attacks on our hospitals and health systems forced us to spend time, money, and energy protecting our people, facilities, and data. Cybersecurity upgrades are not visible, like a new wing in the hospital, but they are just as essential. These threats and attacks cost us money that it could have been spent directly on giving health services to our people. But perhaps the most painful test of this term has been the conviction of 3 members of my own cabinet. From day one, the number one tenet of my administration has been to restore trust in our government and those who lead it. This administration is committed to integrity and does not tolerate leaders who abuse their position of power at the expense of our people. Integrity is not easy, but it is essential. This government operates under one of the most demanding procurement systems in the nation, with layers of checks and balances and no checks. These policies are grounded in transparency and accountability. And even so, we still found it necessary to enhance our commitment through ethics training for all government employees and additional training for all individuals engaged in procurement. We also created and implemented a comprehensive code of conduct and are holding our employees to these rigorous standards. As your governor, I want you to hear this directly from me. I recommit to stamping out corruption wherever it appears and to protecting the trust you have placed in me and my cabinet. I'm asking you, the public, to walk with me in this work. When you see something wrong, report it. When you see something that does not look right, say so. We will investigate and act. And wherever the investigation leads, we will always cooperate and support the pursuit of justice, seeking the light to reveal the truth. Even though it's the act of the few, it reflects on all of us. And we cannot allow the failures of the few to cripple our image or derail the tremendous opportunity we have before us as Virgin Islanders. All of these challenges could have knocked us off course, but they did not. Instead, we became more agile, disciplined, and innovative in our governments. I'm reminded every single day that progress in the Virgin Islands does not happen in a vacuum. It is occurring in the throes of great change, and yet we move forward. That is why even amid uncertainty in 2025, it became another banner year for the Virgin Islands. Not only did our economy remain strong, but we made good on promises to the people of the Virgin Islands. Because at the end of the day, that is what all of this is about, the people. Last year, when I stood before you, I made commitments. Among them, I promised that we would keep paying down old tax refunds. This past year, we paid over $47 million to individuals. To some, success once meant $140 million paid in tax refunds over the span of an entire administration. To date, the Brian Roach administration has paid $500 million in tax refund. That is progress. It's progress that is rooted in the belief that if we can't refund to our people what is owed, we are systematically impoverishing our own. And I want to thank Commissioner McCurdy and the team at Department of Finance and Director Joel Lee and the team at Bureau of Internal Revenue for carrying out the heavy lift. The illustrious and esteemed Lieutenant Governor Tregenza Roach. He has done an excellent job collecting the revenues that power our government. Now think about this. Over the term of our administration, his office alone has collected almost $1 billion. You see, we are modernizing how residents access core services through consolidation and facility upgrades, including the purchase of the former First Bank building, Senator VLA, that will eventually become the home of our public-facing divisions. The Office of the Lieutenant Governor, through the Division of Banking and Insurance, returned over $1 million in unclaimed property and bank accounts to our residents. $1 million. The Money Transmission Revolving Fund collected over $2.3 million in 2025. We work hard with this same legislature to get the language right, and this fund will continue to give for years to come. Finally, after over a decade of planning on hard work, our street addressing initiative is on track to be completed this year. This is huge. This means GPS systems that work, not turned right by the white car next to the mango tree. It means improved emergency response and parcel delivery services for the Virgin Islands. Huge win for the people of the Virgin Islands and the Brian Roach administration. Last year when I stood here, I boldly stated, send me the bill and I will pay the retro. Senators, you delivered, and together we paid out over $21 million in retroactive payments. Thank you to Senator Norville Francis for sponsoring the bill and the other members of the 36th legislature for its passage. Probably one of the most significant accomplishments in decades was securing an increase in the rum cover overrate permanently. Administrations have been trying to do this since Ron DeLuga was a baby. With the assistance of our partners in Washington, D.C., including U.S. Senator Mike Crapo, Kevin Calwood, Terry Helenies, and our lobbyists, we secured the permanent restoration of the rum cover rate to 13.25 proof per gallon forever. This is security for our retirees for the next 30 years. Many said could not be done, but this administration do it and done. I want to thank the good Senator Avery Lewis for passing the resolution to honor Senator Crapo, who is a great friend to the U.S. Virgin Islands. Now, I committed to you that the Office of Disaster Recovery, through Rebuild USVI, would move major projects from concept to contracts. We consolidated projects into bundles and set a goal of issuing 8 $1 billion packages. And in 2025, Director Adrienne Williams-Octolin and her team over-delivered. Today, more than $11.8 billion in federal recovery funds are under contract, launching construction on more than 36 complex projects. That means more than a dozen modernized schools, healthcare facility, roads, and utilities. I want you to listen to this. We went from administrations that once boasted that they had a capital budget of $10 million or $20 million annually. We are dispensing $40 million a month. For the future of public safety, we executed the Territorial Fire Station Bundle, bringing our critical facilities into one coordinated construction push, like the soon-to-be-named, can't wait for it, the Darrell Mosey George Sr. Fire Station in Estate Katrina. This will give our firefighters modern bases of operation and improve response times when emergencies strike. In education, we move from design to delivery and into comprehensive rebuilding of our school system. On St. Thomas, the bundle advances the St. Thomas Administrative Center, the Lockhart, Janie Tuitt, Emmanuel Benjamin Oliver, Yvonne Milner-Bowski, and Ivana Idora Ken schools. And we have active contracts for the main campus of Charlotte Amalie High School and Bertha C. Bochelta Middle School. The St. Croix bundles is in contracting phase and includes the Alexander Henderson, Alfredo Andrews, Claudio Marco, Pearl B. Larson elementary schools. We also executed contracts for St. Croix Central High School as well as the St. Croix Educational Complex. Together, these awards total 13 school campuses across the territories and will give our students the learning environments they deserve. In recovery, health, and senior care, we are in the pre-construction phase for a full health and human services campus at Nude Hansen. This year, Nude Hansen comes down. We are finalizing the contract for construction on the Herbert Grigg Home for the Aged. On St. John, we began pre-construction activities for Myra Keaton Smith Health Center, the Morris DeCastro Clinic, and the new Julia E. Sprouse School. For our roads and public utilities, we are executing large underground contracts. On St. Croix, the North Central bundle combines underground power, wastewater, potable water replacements, communications replacements, and unified paving into a single progressive design build contract. On St. Thomas, the East Horizontal Bundle delivers the same coordinated approach. The one dig approach reduces the disruption in surrounding neighborhoods and prevents the same roads from being dug up more than once. That gets on all of our nerves. We have received bids for the prudent replacement of the Richmond Power Plant in St. Croix and the Randolph-Harley Power Plant on St. Thomas. That's both power plants being replaced, even after all we have done already to them. Taken together, these 2025 awards show that ODR and the Rebuild USVI initiative have shifted the recovery from planning to execution, turning federal obligations into active contracts, jobs, and progress in every district. This past December, we kept our word and broke ground on a new Donna M. Christensen Department of Health building on St. Croix. Tonight, I want to thank Dr. Donna Christensen for all she has done for healthcare and all she has done for our administration and the people of the Virgin Islands. We are in the final stages of contracting and will soon select a contractor to rebuild the 1F Louis Hospital. This thing has gone out to bid 3 times now. We've secured all the funding, we've completed the design, and are dedicated to the staff of JFL. We're making the final preparations now to vacate that hospital and so the demolition can begin this year. That same urgency has guided us to the system that powers everything we are rebuilding. A modern hospital cannot thrive on an unstable grid. That is why in my final 4 years in office, I have dedicated a tremendous amount of time to eliminating our perpetual energy crisis. A crisis that has plagued us in fiscal management, reliability, and most importantly, costs. Now, we are determined to make WAPA a renewable energy company. Our mission is simple. It's simple in concept, but Lord, is it complex in execution. Keep it on, make it cheap. This year, we delivered large-scale solar and battery projects that are finally changing how our grid works. 2 new utility-scale solar farms at estates Petronella and Hogansburg, paired with battery storage, now deliver more than 30 megawatts. That's about 2/3 the daytime capacity on St. Croix, plus 30 megawatts of storage. That is cleaner, steadier power, and power that reduces fuel costs, so ratepayers are not held hostage by oil prices. Working with the 36th legislature, we expedited the coastal zone permits for a new solar and battery projects at Estate Fortuna here in St. Thomas, as well as Bovoni. When they are online, these solar farms will provide an additional 35 megawatts of capacity to the power needs of St. Thomas and St. John. These projects make the Virgin Islands a global leader in solar per capita. And at the same time, the Virgin Islands Energy Office expanded direct incentives for solar, battery systems, and efficient appliances, and provided public electric vehicle charging station. This means rebates on electric cars and appliances, 1% loans for residential solar systems, and free energy-saving appliances for our residents. Thank you, Director Kyle Fleming. Now, Commissioner Derek Gabriel and his team at the Department of Public Works have had an extraordinary year in both districts. Several bridges have been reconstructed on St. Croix, including East Airport Road Bridge, the Upper Love Connector Road Bridge, the Calcahoon Midland Road Bridge, and a bridge on Queen Mary Highway near Carlton. These were critical infrastructure repairs built to withstand tomorrow's flood and heavy rain events. We delivered by paving roads all over this territory. Downtown Charlotte Amalia, First Avenue, the Fort Christian parking lot, LaGrange, Peters Rest, South Shore Road, and the Airport Road. As promised, we broke ground on Mahogany Road and is now in full reconstruction going through the rainforest. As one of our many 40-year accomplishments by this administration, we finally have a dedicated turning lane at Container Port intersection on the Melvin Evans Highway. We finished the Clifton Hill adjoining roadway, and there are street lights for as far as the eye can see. If that wasn't enough, we delivered a 300-seat ferry vessel named the Spirit of 1733, the largest ferry vessel in our Vitran fleet, connecting St. Thomas and St. John. This ferry will be complemented by the St. Croix St. Thomas Ferry, which is currently in design and scheduled to carry both vehicles and passengers between the two districts. To top it off, we secured the funding for Veterans Drive Phase 2. This project has gone out to bid and will complement Veterans Drive Phase 1, providing substantial congestion relief to our residents and visitors on St. Thomas. We opened the Dale A. Gregory Transportation Center at Tiroli King Airport, improving accessibility for locals and visitors. This year, we also took a major step forward at Crown Bay, working with the 36th legislature in the Virgin Islands Port Authority, we consolidated and approved a lease for a $200 million public-private redevelopment that will modernize the upland areas and add a whole new cruise berth to St. Thomas. Thank you to my good friend, Director Dow, and the people at the Port Authority for this effort. But unfortunately, the side effect of all this success is inflation. As our economy grows, we must fight to keep the dream of home ownership within the reach for the people who are building the economy. The VI Slice Moderate Income Home Ownership Program, which provides up to $200,000 grant, is directly investing in the American dream for Virgin Islanders. And as of the close of 2025, the program has successfully empowered 72 families to become first-time homeowners. These families not only became homeowners, but they also gained an asset that added an average of $90,000 to each of those family wealth. That is a legacy that any homeowner can be proud of. That is why this year we authorized another $2 million for the SICE program. Legislators, we must pass legislation that will make this program permanent and put our people in their own homes. It is in this very spot that I pledge our administration would execute the largest property acquisition in the history of the Virgin Islands. And we did it. We secured the purchase of over 2,400 acres at Maroon Ridge and added it to our territorial park system. This important part of our history will now be preserved forever. Thank you, Commissioner Oriol and your team. During our election year activity, it really showed Tregenza and I that people really needed low-cost entertainment and activities. Almost nightly, the campaign headquarters would be abuzz. To put it simply, there was always something going on. And last year, I promised that we would make progress on our recreational facilities and provide low-cost, healthy activities to our residents. Well, the Reynolds Jackson Sports Complex can once again host baseball games in Frederiksted. Another visible sign of progress is the reopening of the Vincent F. Mason Senior Coral Resort Park in Frederiksted. In 2025, we opened a modern, accessible pool and park where children are learning to swim and families gather. Not to be outdone, the revitalization of Ezra Fredericks Ballpark is well underway, with the completion of a 16,000 square foot skate park, a new playground, and shaded area for seating, transforming this area in Friedenhoy into a vibrant multi-use recreational hub. But we knew we couldn't stop there. We secured funding to install new lighting for the entire park. And we are working with FIFA to install a new soccer field, which should be completed this year. And no recreational facility would be complete in today's age without internet. We dedicated a lot of time and an effort to ensure that we provided free internet to those who need it. This year, we can boast that our territory-wide internet program is almost complete, with over 50,000 individual users per month. It is in every park, playground, library, beach, public housing community. This gives every resident the opportunity to participate in the global economy. Thank you to Stephen Adams at VINGN, Commissioner Roberts at Department of Sports, Parks and Recreation. Our efforts to improve public safety are no longer just plans on paper. In 2025, we added a new fireboat to our fleet, enabling us to fight fires on the water and conduct marine and search rescue. This month, we took possession of not one, not two, not three, but 7 new ambulances, replacing our aging fleet. We are expanding our capacity across all 3 islands and now training and equipping our own EMTs and paramedics. I want to thank Director Stevens for his steady leadership, and to our first responders. You are the heartbeat of our public safety. You answered every alarm. You responded to every emergency. You handled all those late calls. Tonight, on behalf of a grateful territory, we applaud your hard work and your commitment. We have also modernized our roads and our police, how we police our roads and our communities with our new e-citation system. Officers can issue traffic tickets electronically and spend more time where the public needs them most, out in our neighborhoods. And with the initial deployment of a real-time crime center, we now have a modern hub that brings together cameras, license plate readers, and data analysis to support investigation and guide patrols. This is 21st century policing in a small territory, and it's already making a difference. Kudos to Commissioner Mario Brooks and our men and women in blue of the Virgin Islands Police Department. These milestones are powerful reminders of how far we have come and how fortitude and persistence can lead to progress and opportunity for our people. You see, change is hard, but progress is even more difficult. So tonight, I want to offer a special thank you to the members of the 36th Legislature for standing with us as we navigated this past year. That partnership was not abstract. Together, we moved on critical coastal zone management permits to improve reliability of the Water and Power Authority and strengthen our energy future. Together, we secured $5 million to get horse racing moving again on St. Croix. Together, we advanced the redevelopment of Crown Bay, positioning our ports for greater tourism and commerce. And together, we worked to secure Frenchman's Reef and Bowie House as assets of the people of the Virgin Islands. These are all concrete examples of what happens when we have a legislative and executive branch working together. And contrary to the rumor mill, the legislature and I have not spent the past year at odds, at least not the whole year. We have debated, we've disagreed, we have negotiated hard, but that spirit has allowed us to pass important legislation. Even when the politics were loud and the cameras were rolling, I am proud to say that tonight, in the face of it all, we remained focused, and the promises we made were kept to the people. See, in a small community like ours, every single rumor feels like news, and every headline can sound like a foregone conclusion. Over these years, we've had our share of tough coverage and criticism, public disagreements, and that's before you even count the myriad of political distractions on Facebook and social media. And I respect the free and active press. It is essential to our democracy. But I also know that the noise can sometimes drown out the steady, unglamorous work being done on behalf of the people. Let me offer a simple thank you to the people of these islands. Your honesty keeps us grounded. Your patience keeps us humble. Your resilience points the way, and everything worth noting tonight traces back to that, our people. But tonight is more about alleged programs and progress, challenges and accomplishment. It is about how far we have come and where we intend to go next. That is why I fervently declare, plainly and without contradiction, as our record allows me to state, that the state of the territory is anchored in progress. After all we have achieved in 2025, I'm happy to share tonight that our journey continues. Tonight I will outline plans for this year. Despite governing in the face of constant challenges, we remain resolute. Anchored in progress it's not a finish line. It is a firm mooring in moving waters. Even our greatest work leaves echoes yet to be answered. Every bright morning casts a shadow we must still light. So tonight, from a place of gratitude and resolve, we turn our eyes to the horizon of 2026 and press forward with the purpose of improving the daily life of Virgin Islanders and the guests we extend a welcome to. And let me begin with what touches every family: healthcare. In 2026, we will reopen the Charlotte Kimmelman Center. Virgin Islanders will once again be able to receive comprehensive cancer care right here at home, surrounded by family, not in a hotel room on the mainland. We are working on modernizing our entire healthcare system. We are increasing access to care, building the state-of-the-art facilities, recruiting providers with diverse specialties, growing a stronger, more expansive health workforce, implementing modern health technology systems, and ensuring functional health exchange to securely share confidential medical records. But reopening and rebuilding facilities alone are not enough. They must be supported by better policies and a dynamic organizational structure. Since the start of my administration, we have advocated for a unified healthcare hospital system. Tonight, I stand fully with the Territorial Hospital Board to establish a single hospital system. By pooling resources and negotiating together, our hospital will stretch every dollar further and deliver more consistent care from the first visit to recovery across the territory. I know you heard it all before, but in the coming weeks, you will see the action of a hospital board that is intent on unifying our system. We are also collaborating with all the governors of all the insular territories in a coordinated effort to bring telehealth and healthcare to our people. This groundbreaking initiative combines our health records. It will improve diagnoses. It will track patients' progress and make billing collections more efficient for all our hospitals. It is not something any one of us can afford, but together we will make it way with all the territories. And now as health will undoubtedly find its footing, learning must also lift our children higher. We all know the age and strain of all our school campuses. I was on Olamulla today. I attended that 50 years ago. John H. Woodson Junior High, built more than 43 years ago, is an example. And this is one of our newer schools. In 2026, we will close that campus for good. And those students will walk into the new state-of-the-art Arthur A. Richards pre-K through 8 school. This new facility is awesome. It boasts a gym that doubles as shelter, a multi-purpose library, a swimming pool, and the resilient infrastructure our children deserve. This will be the first new school to open in the territory in 30 years, complementing the other 13 already under contract. Now, we have many, many competent, well-trained teachers, and they're leading this mission and showing through their work their commitment to the academic success of our students. 2 perfect examples are with us this evening. First, the District Teacher of the Year for St. Thomas and St. John is Miss Jessica Sibley, a 5th grade teacher at Janie Tuitt Elementary School. We got big up for the Savant School. Thank you. And in St. Croix, the District Teacher of the Year is Miss Joni Phillip, a 6th grade English language arts teacher at Ricardo Richards Elementary School. A national blue ribbon school at Arthur Richards. Ricardo Richards. Our amazing teachers are developing the next great minds. But a bright future also requires affordable housing. In 2026 on St. Croix, 106 newly redeveloped affordable homes will house families at David Hamilton Jackson Terrace, building on the 248 units already occupied at Walter I.M. Hodge. And on St. Thomas, pre-construction is underway for 2 high-rise apartment designed with an on-site microgrid. And as you turn the corner to Home Depot, you can see 84 modern homes at the new estate dune rising out of the ground. Similarly, we are nearing completion of 90 homes under the Envision Tomorrow program, building on the 88 homes that are already completed. And yes, in Williams Delight, we have provided grants that allow residents to own their homes. This year, we're making another 31 available for home ownership. Thank you, Senator Maurice James, for our work on that. Roads and public works are the threads that stitch our daily lives together. In St. Croix, we have secured $28 million to reconstruct and resurface East Scenic, La Valley, and South Side roads, as well as Strand, King, and Queen streets in downtown Frederickstead. To the people of Williams Delight, after a really long FEMA review process, I am pleased to announce that we will begin paving and drainage improvements in your neighborhood this year. In the St. Thomas St. John district, we will take major road projects spanning from Julian Jackson Road in the West Estate, Nazareth in the east, including Bovoni, Bolongo, and Skyline Drive. Public Works has also secured the funding for the much anticipated Nardo Trotman Drive. Right, though? This bypass road will ease the traffic along the Weymouth-Reimer Highway from Carsey-Les to the Fort Milliner intersection. Getting home just got a little bit easier. These are steady investments that keep people and goods moving. Speaking of moving, this year we will be deploying 28 new buses to include paratransit and the ability to transport our vulnerable population. Public Works again. Structure and sewer systems across the territory. The waste management is working with our underground people to prioritize those areas where the sewage is the worst. But we must begin paying our fair share for solid waste disposal, garbage disposal. We cannot continue to expect reliable service or keep our vendors paid if we are not willing to pay what it costs. There's a simple truth in public service. Communities are measured by how they manage their waste and how they protect their people. This year, we will continue the phased camera installations across the territory, adding to the cameras that have already been put up in St. John, and for the first time in our history, the Virgin Islands Police Department will actually be using drone technology to respond to emergency situations. And while enforcement is important, a fair and accessible judiciary is paramount. Tonight, I am pleased to announce the nomination of Judge Denise M. Francois to the Supreme Court of the Virgin Islands. Once confirmed, this will be the first time in the court's history that it has a full complement of 5 justices. And I'm also pleased to announce the nomination of attorney Renee M. Andre to the Superior Court of the Virgin Islands of the St. Thomas St. John District. They will serve us well. During this administration, we have worked to protect the pastimes that make us who we are as Virgin Islanders, by rebuilding and reimagining the courts, fields, and tracks where our stories are told. Central to our story is the tradition of horse racing. This past year, we hosted 6 major race days at Clinton Phipps, generating hundreds of thousands of dollars in prize money, new economic activity, and a renewed sense of pride in the sport of kings. Thank you, Southbound Gaming. And meanwhile, we ended our relationship with VIGL, and now the potential for horse racing will be moving forward in St. Croix. But if we are to return to horse racing in St. Croix, I really enjoy the Crucians coming to St. Thomas to race, but if we are to return to horse racing in St. Croix, it will require a little bit more than concrete and steel. Our administration is pursuing a comparable public-private partnership similar to the Clinton-Phipps racetrack agreement, only bigger. And under that framework, we expect to see real investment in the rebuilding of the Randall Jock James racetrack. I look forward to submitting legislation within the next 2 weeks to bring this long-standing tradition back to life. But in drafting the legislation to support this progress, we saw the need to consolidate the entities that regulate gaming in the territory. That is why tonight I am asking the members of this august body to support legislation that merges the Virgin Islands Lottery and the Casino Control Commission once and for all. A single unified regulator means one rule book, consistent enforcement, and lower costs to the people. It also creates a stable, dedicated revenue stream to support racetrack operations, youth, sports, and cultural programs. I'm looking forward to this quick passage of that legislation. I think one of the senators has already preempted me. Now, those who would judge us merely by the heights we have achieved would do well to remember the depths from which we started. Kwame Nkrumah once said that. I understand that the human psyche will not allow one to fully appreciate the body of work while you are still toiling in the task. But I can assure you that our output has been vast and impactful, and it has changed the course of these Virgin Islands for years to come. To truly grasp that progress, though, we must look back at what we inherited and measure the territory's trajectory from whence we came. Now, we've made 7 trips around the sun, and the final is 8. Now, 8 is a rather profound number. It's representative of balance, harmony, prosperity, and infinite potential. Hence, permit me a moment of introspection. As one of 9 individuals elected governor of the Virgin Islands, I have a deep appreciation for the efforts of those who came before me. Each of my predecessors helped shape the Virgin Islands we know today, and in their own way made this administration successful. Tonight, I want to thank Governors DeYoung and Governor Mapp. They are very different leaders, but many of the achievements that we've had rest on the foundations that they laid. The push for renewable energy and reduced dependence on fossil fuels, early childhood education, GRS reforms, retroactive wage payments, the Diageo Rum Agreement, and initial Irma and Maria recovery efforts, major projects such as Veterans Drive, Main Street, Nardo Trotman Drive, Crown Bay, all of them moved forward during my tenure, thanks in part to the vision and the groundwork of former governors. Now, I have learned that 8 years is never enough to start and finish every initiative. I'm reminded of a story told me by my good friend, Ralph Gonsalves, former Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. He told me that in 2001, he asked Butch Stewart, the owner of Sandals, to build a Sandals resort in St. Vincent. Butch told him to build an airport first, and then he would build a hotel. In 2017, he completed the airport. And in 2024, not Butch, his son Adam delivered the country's first Sandals. 24 years. And tonight I have my good friend Storm Gonsalves, who's in the crowd with us. Please give him a round of applause. The son of the comrade himself. 24 years. Or what would have been 6 gubernatorial terms later, they fulfilled the promise that is the anchor of St. Vincent's tourism industry. Progress don't happen overnight, nor by luck. And it does not come if you try to go at it alone or refuse to build on what was started before. I honor our former governors, and that is why I'm committed to ensuring that both their official portraits are completed before I leave office. Governor DeYoung's portrait will be unveiled early this quarter, and Governor's map portrait, he was up there the other day taking pictures because it's already been commissioned. Now, when we started our journey to lead this territory, Tregenza and I knew that the challenges were ahead and that it would take fortitude and creativity to change course. Over the last 7 years, we rode the highs and the lows, the ups and the downs, but never wavered, no matter the headwinds or the headlines. And as I delve into these thoughts, I must reflect as far back as the administration's first State of the Territory address, in which I advised that our territory was in distress. We inherited a government so strained that even meeting payroll was in doubt. The Virgin Islands government had borrowed $212 million for operations and couldn't borrow a cent more. There was no cash reserved, and we carried more than $270 million in vendor payment. Missed GRS contribution had become routine. The retirement system had 4 active lawsuits against the government. A court injunction blocked the collection of more than $40 million annually in excise taxes, and GRS was underfunded by $5 billion. That's not rhetoric. That was the reality of the day. Let's face it, when we took office, a stop sign was a rare encounter. Not even the street lights were working, and there certainly wasn't no $8 billion in any bank. We had to rebuild this territory. That night, Lieutenant Governor Roach and I pledged to secure GRS, modernize government, fix Carlton Road, expand pre-K to every school, and set a 20-year vision for the territory. We were going to cut our reliance on fossil fuels and strengthen our infrastructure. Those commitments became our guideposts in the path to restoring faith that government can still deliver. Now, some of those promises were large and structural, and others were as personal as a promise made to one young man. That night, I pledged to Nakai Theodore that we would fix Carlton Road, one of many road projects that followed. Tonight, Nakai is a big man. He's here with his mother, and he's proved with us that living proof of us that we kept our word. Nakai. He was in Claudio Marco when we started. No, he in college. Thank you, Nakai. I learned along the way that progress is never instant, but it comes when we honor the commitments and stay the course. In our second year, just as we steadied our feet, I thought it was going to be, smooth sailing. A global pandemic arrived and tested every seam of our existence. The Brian Roach administration and the people of the Virgin Islands led one of the strongest, most proactive COVID-19 responses, not in the Caribbean, but in the world. When COVID infiltrated our shores, the Brian Roach administration, we were already preparing. We coordinated with our federal partners and the local partners to secure our borders, expand our hospital capacity, and provide life-saving vaccines. With the announcement of the first known case in March 2020, we acted to issue masks and social distancing guidelines. We shuttered schools and government offices and moving classrooms and workers online. We created a phase alert system that clearly guided the public through every stage of the pandemic. We launched a travel portal. Let me in, please. Requiring negative COVID tests before entry, and worked closely with our cruise line to protect our border and economy. They said that over 300 people would die in the first 3 months, but over 500,000 tests were administered. More than 26,000 cases were identified, and over 70,000 of our people were vaccinated. Our hospitals never became overrun. And while we mourned 133 lives lost, we saved countless more. We were in this together. When some jurisdictions found it difficult to be neighborly, we were blessed to have the resources to fight. So when Sam the sailor needed care, we opened our arms and provided the help he needed. When the British Virgin Islands had limited access to COVID-19 vaccines, we assisted them setting up our stuff on the docks with vaccinating their population. And when every port in the Caribbean closed, the U.S. Virgin Islands welcomed the boats to our shores. Thank you, Commissioner Encarnacion, Department of Health, and our entire team. In our hardest days, it was faith that steadied us and kept us moving forward. When we hosted the first day of prayer at Government House, we opened the doors not just for ceremony, but so Muslims and Christians and Protestants and Catholics and even Rastafari could join in lifting this territory in faith, asking for wisdom and protection and strength to carry one another through. When the rest of the Caribbean was shut down, we remained open. We not only remained open, but we also allocated funds for small business grant. We awarded businesses up to $50,000. Premium pay rewarded COVID workers with over $40 million in checks. And COVID scholarships were awarded to over 900 students, totaling $1 million. But through preparation and decisiveness, our territory stood strong. Together, we turned challenges into progress and adversity into opportunity. And out of that gauntlet came purpose. Purpose. We learned that creative and decisive leadership can turn constraint into opportunity. When doors closed, we built new ones. When rules were rigid, we found lawful paths that served our people. That is the Brian Roach approach. Pragmatic, people-centered, and aimed at a broad prosperity. Our economy is stronger today than ever before. And certainly stronger than the one we inherited in 2019. And since then, we have taken a conservative and responsible approach that has driven measurable growth. Our gross domestic product has grown from $3.9 billion in 2018 to an estimated $5 billion today. That is without the presence of the refinery. That's without the refinery working. The unemployment rate dropped from 10.7 in 2018 to 3.6 today, the lowest in our history. Apart from the pandemic years, local revenues grew by an average of 8% annually, from $830 million in 2018 to over $1 billion in 2022. In fact, the growth was so strong that we took $40 million that we used to put into the general fund from the run cover over and gave it to the GRS. This sacrifice means that in the last 3 years alone, we have contributed over $120 million of what used to do roads, schools, and other repairs, and used it to secure our pension system, on top of all the other money they're getting. That is sacrifice. And nevertheless, we continue to march on and continue to grow our revenue base. Because when we took office in 2009, the government of the Virgin Islands' overall debt was $2.2 billion. We proposed, managed, and balanced budgets that matched estimated revenues, resulting in a surplus. Never happened before. We implemented a disciplined line of credit to manage our cash flow, accelerate recovery where we can pay vendors more reliably. And for the first time in this government's history, we activated the Budget Stabilization Fund, commonly known as the Rainy Day Fund. That fund today has over $10 million sitting on it. Through all the challenges, and I like to say these things because they're factual and can be fact-checked. Because through all the challenges we confronted, we have actually managed to reduce the overall debt of the Virgin Islands by 25%, from $2.2 billion to $1.6 billion today. People are always talking about what the federal government could do. Our debt represents 32% of our GDP. The United States, one of the most powerful countries in the world, their debt is 120% of their GDP, 4 times what ours is. But as we finish this term, the story is simple. We took an economy that was fragile and uncertain, and through discipline, investment, and partnership, we have positioned the Virgin Islands for sustained growth and opportunity for years to come. When we leave office, we will leave more than $70 million in cash reserve and a lot less debt. That is anchored in progress. But I think one of the most important ways we began to rebuilding trust is by doing right by our public workers, our servants, public servants. Early in my term, we addressed one of the many demands that the people asked, that we repay the 8% salary cut from 2011. And altogether, we paid $45 million in that debt. And over the 7 years, we made it a priority to chip away at the mountain of old retroactive pay. From 1982, we owe this debt. We deliver more than $66 million in retro wages to current and retired government employees. This ain't in a speech, but to my people, I'm going to try to get out some this year, too. I don't know how, but we're going to try. But this is the largest sustained effort to pay down that debt in the history of our Virgin Islands. We did this because we understand what these funds mean to Virgin Islands families. You know what it's like when you retire on $13,000 a year and butter gone from $1.35 to $8.99? We understand what it means to families. That is also why we found the funds to support the minimum government salary increase from $27,000 to $35,000. It's not that we don't want people to get money, we just want to make sure we got the money to pay. When this was proposed, we were the sole advocates for the private sector employees. How can the government set the minimum wage at $16.85 and leave the private sector employees at $10.25? I'd like to thank the good Senator Franklin Johnson for hearing our plea and taking the steps to correct this injustice. It is now law. We signed it into law. But at the same time, every wage agreement we negotiated with our union was structured honestly and funded in the budget so that raises were paid when promised and did not turn into tomorrow's retro. The result is that we are steadily reducing the retroactive balance that we inherited while refusing to add a single dollar of unfunded wage obligations to our people. Thank you, Chief Negotiator Josh Springett. Now, over the course of our tenure here, we have secured over $180 million in settlement funds for the people of the Virgin Islands. All of these from lawsuits initiated by our Department of Justice. Those resources are being directed into prevention and treatment, survivor support, victim services, and stronger enforcement, while also helping community organizations expand the work they do every day. It's with these same funds that this year we bought a brand new home for Nana's Baby Children Home and compliments of the 36th legislature and the people of the Virgin Islands. I want to thank Gordon Ray, the Attorney General, and all our attorneys and people that work under the Department of Justice for their tireless work on our behalf. Even before I took office, the single greatest threat to our government and our families was the GRS. It was not only a threat to the government employees, it was a threat to the economy of the Virgin Islands, because if retirees don't get their money and no insurance, it would be a disaster. The actuaries were clear that if we did nothing, the system would have run out of money 2 years ago, 2023. And retirees who had served us for decades would face the unthinkable risk of not getting a pension. I could not accept that. We could not accept that. We made it our mission to protect the dignity of our retirees and to make sure that men and women who kept this government running would not be left behind. Working with the legislature and our financial team, we did something that people said could not be done. You're going to hear that a lot. We created a real rescue plan, not another study. We restructured our rum cover bonds and used the saving to fund the retirement system. In addition, we settled 4 lawsuits against the government, some that were decades old, and reduced the processing time that it took to retire more than 90%. People couldn't retire. The government owed the retirement system money. And because of that work, the GRS have already received hundreds of millions of dollars. We continue to urge, though, that it needs reforms. It's like Social Security. You can't just fix it one time. You have to keep fixing it because the inflation keeps going up. Securing the permanent rum cover over perhaps was one of the most important victories of the administration. So when I talk about being anchored in progress, this is what I mean. We took a system that was on the verge of collapse and gave it a lifeline measured in decades. And long after we leave office, history will judge this rescue of GRS as one of the most consequential achievements, not for me, for our people. When we talked about rebuilding this economy, I knew we needed more than just a list of projects. We need a roadmap. That is why, working with the Economic Development Authority, we launched Vision 2040, built with the voices of thousands of Virgin Islanders who contributed. Vision 2040 called for substantial investment in our blue economy. But now, all these efforts are being undermined by the British Virgin Islands and the outrageous increase in maritime fees. They are friends and neighbors, but we are exploring every option, including working with our federal partners to achieve parity. We respect that the BVI needs additional revenue to pave their roads. They don't have $25 billion. They need money to build their infrastructure and move their society forward. But we too have to eat, and their policy should not and will not create barriers in these Virgin Islands that impede our economy and commerce. After years of trying to get new hotel projects in the ground, in 2025, we saw the Hotel Development Act doing exactly what it was meant to do. This past August, we opened the 126-room Hampton by Hilton on St. Thomas, the first newly built large-scale hotel in more than 30 years. Its completion is a powerful symbol that our tourism product is being rebuilt and modernized in a real and lasting way. And over these 7 years, we have taken tourism to record highs and used it as a platform to tell a bigger story about who we are as Virgin Islanders. Visitor arrivals increased from 1.6 million in 2019 to 2.5 million in 2025. Hotel occupancy rose on an average from 38 to 61%. We achieved an average daily cruise ship visitor spend of $166 a day. It's the second highest in the Caribbean. And once again, our cruise business is now among the strongest in the Eastern Caribbean. We saw an exponential increase in cruise arrivals in St. Croix in a single year. From 2019 to the present, passenger arrivals have quadrupled from fewer than 60,000 to more than 241,000 tourists visiting Frederiksted Port every year. We also took over Carnival. We built a modern tourism product that showcased our culture and our people. And through our division of festivals and cultural heritage, we enhanced our carnivals and festivals. We used that platform to attract major brands like Uber Soca and to package our music, food, and culture for the region and the diaspora. We strengthened our marketing with St. Croix, a vibe like no other. And our territory-wide Naturally and Rhythm brand. We ventured into new markets with partnerships with professional sports teams like the New York Jets and sponsored international events like DC United versus Bermuda at the Bethlehem Soccer Complex. From reopening and adding flagship hotels and eco-resorts to winning national recognition as an innovative, top-ranked destination, we have not only rebuilt tourism, but also repositioned it as a more diversified, resilient, and locally rooted pillar of our economy. This year at the Caribbean Awards, we were named Caribbean Cruise Destination of the Year and Experiential Destination of the Year. Thank you to Commissioner Jennifer Madarangas-King and the work of former Commissioner Joseph Buscelta. At the start of this administration, far too much of our government was still on paper. Vendors had to walk contracts from desk to desk. It was hard to know where a purchase order stood, and the public had no simple way to see how their tax dollars were being spent. I made commitment to modernize those systems. Today, procurement is faster and fairer, and transparency is more than just a campaign promise. We launched GVI Buy as our first government-wide e-procurement and contract system. At the same time, we launched our Open Finance Portal and Transparency website, giving the public for the first time a clear window into revenues, budgets, payroll, and expenditures. Thank you, Commissioner Alicia Alejandro and Director Julio Raima. No matter what they say, together we have made modernization and openness part of the daily practice of the Virgin Islands government. When we took office in 1929, the Bureau of Motor Vehicles was a symbol of everything people disliked about government. Long lines, outdated systems, too much paperwork. We committed to a different future and transformed BMV into one of our most modern, customer-centered agencies. Today, residents can renew their registration and licenses online and book appointments. People used to take the day off to go get licensed. Now you could do it as little as 15 minutes from your house, 24/7, 365. Thank you, Director Barbara McIntosh. We're making improvements along with electronics and electronic citations, and we've integrated with the courts now, and now I've approved the BMV to allow inspection-free registration for vehicles up to 10 years old. You don't got to go down no more. Our administration's successful implementation of technology has improved government services and operations and encouraged private sector growth. Today, from your phone, you could start a business, register it at the Lieutenant Governor, find out how much money you owe on taxes for it, submit the permits, go to get the trademarks and corporation, file and pay your taxes, all from your cell phone. That is progress. A key part of our shift from crisis to strategy was the creation of ODR. In our first year, I established ODR as a dedicated team within the Public Finance Authority, whose only mission is to manage and drive our recovery. Before ODR, federal disaster dollars were scattered across agencies and projects that move way too slowly. Today, we have one office tracking every project, every obligation, and every deadline, and coordinating directly with FEMA, HUD, and all our federal partners. We grew and secured our recovery from a potential $8 billion to an obligated $25 billion. Further, you have to remember there would be no recovery if we had not reduced the federal match. The Virgin Islands government and the people of the Virgin Islands would have to find $2.5 billion of its own to match the $25 billion that was given from the federal government. But through ODR and our work with the Biden administration, we reduced that from 10% to 2%, saving the Virgin Islands over $2 billion. They live simply. Get the funds, spend the funds, and spend it correctly. Thank you, Director Williams-Octolin and the team at ODR. I wasn't going to be brief because I want to refresh your memory. Because in 2022, I signed the merger of the Fire and Service Emergency Medical Services into a single entity. Y'all remember? The ambulance have to come from Christiansted to Frederiksted. People dying while they're waiting on ambulance. Even here, 3 ambulance calls at the same time, we can't do it. We did it. The legislature, we integrated these key public safety agencies. And it's a reform that people have been working on for 25 years. VITEMA, we restored and modernized our tsunami warning system. We activated emergency operations for 6 separate incidents. Hurricanes, tropical storms, the COVID-19 pandemic, the Bavoni landfill fire, the lead and water crisis. Y'all remember that? And the WAPA energy crisis. Every administration faces emergencies, but no one has successfully managed as many complex events as we have. In October 2024, after 4 years of preparation, the U.S. Virgin Islands received full accreditation for its emergency management program. We are the first and only U.S. territory to receive. Thank you, Director Glasson and the team at VITEMA. When we came into office in 2019, the state of healthcare in these Virgin Islands reflected years of strain and storm. On St. Croix, 1F Louis was still operating in substandard space and temporary configurations. Let me say it plainly, you had to go outside to use the bathroom. Remember that? Schneider was aging and in need of major upgrades. Behavioral health services were fragmented. Our public health data were outdated, and we were trying We were trying to find people we lost in the storm. They went to the States and nobody had any idea where they went. Our Medicaid program faced federal caps and an unfavorable match. So even when the need was clear, we couldn't pay the match. From the beginning, we set out on a plan for healthier horizons. We pushed telehealth and technology. We stood up JFL North as an interim facility while we pursued a new permanent hospital. But perhaps the most significant policy achievement in healthcare was securing the Medicaid match permanently. For years, we struggled with the match that forced prior governors to cover 45% of the costs. This was onerous on our healthcare system, but through our persistence, we secured this match at 17% permanently. We expanded the income limits to make people more eligible under our service. Under our administration, we provided care to over 29,000 Virgin Islanders annually. Thank you, Delegate Plaskett, for your work on this. We did this along community partners who filled critical gaps. When the local dialysis center threatened to close, we worked with the legislature to secure funding and expand capacity, enabling Schneider Regional to open a vacant wing and expand dialysis service. We also supported the startup of the 13-chair Virgin Islands Healthcare Foundation Dialysis Center on St. Croix. We funded it, $2 million. We funded the Virgin Islands Diabetes Center of Excellence, which delivers tailored care and education and outreach to the uninsured and the most at risk throughout the territory. Now more Virgin Islanders receive critical care right here at home. And when we said we would stabilize and rebuild healthcare in the Virgin Islands, we meant both bricks and mortar and the policy that sustains it. Healthcare and energy have been two of our most long-standing, deeply rooted challenges, and two of the issues our people feel most deeply about. And we're committed to tackle both. In 2017, the hurricane shattered an electrical system that had to be rebuilt for the third time, completely rebuilt for the third time in 30 years. We knew that if we did not fix energy, nothing else in our recovery would stand. When we began this journey to stabilize WAPA, we knew that the darkest hour, no pun intended, would come before the dawn. We started slowly using our federal funds to purchase the Wartsila generators. We launched a territory-wide composite pole installation effort, replacing all wooden poles with hurricane-resistant pole. It's now 90% complete. We went out and we purchased Vital propane assets from Vital, $140 million. As a result, WAPA has been able to reduce its fuel transportation costs. We went out and we paid down the $26 million the government owed, which went as high as $100 million they owed WAPA for years. We paid it and moved the central government and hospital into a single-payer system. So today, we remain current with WAPA. We took $100 million in ARPA funds to ensure that your rates did not go up. By 2023, I had seen enough. I declared a state of emergency so we could get faster, clear roadblocks. We invested additional ARPA dollars to purchase new generation equipment. And we once again used our rainy day fund to clear more than $11 million in past due balances owed not by central government, by semi-autonomous agencies. And together, these actions did not solve every problem at WAPA, but they turned the corner from crisis management to a real path forward. WAPA has begun to make real progress. The government is paying its WAPA bills on time. The new solar facilities at Bolonga and Fortuna and St. Thomas will increase generation, reducing the likelihood of island-wide outages. That should happen by this summer. And yes, I can announce that the new Wartsila units are now operating on propane. When energy costs go down, everybody's costs go down and you have more money in your pocket. But like the rest of the country, we have been beaten by winds of inflation. Every single thing has gone up. Everything except your light bill. Never in our history of our territory has the rate remained the same for low or lower for 7 consecutive years. But that's not enough. Carl, tonight, I call on WAPA and the Public Service Commission to immediately take steps to lower the rate within the first quarter of this year so that our families can feel some relief. But it won't mean anything if our people cannot accurately get their bill. That is why in this upcoming year, WAPA will begin rolling out its new automated metering infrastructure to accurately read meters. This will cure the excessive estimating and erratic billing that has become far too common. Not only will the bill be correct, but it will be a little bit lower, leaving more for our families and discretionary incomes. But the final fix for WAPA, however, will come when we solve its financial problems. We can harden the system and modernize generation, but we must also fix the balance sheet. And WAPA is working real hard on that solution. I'm asking senators to join me in passing the reforms and tools we need to put the utility on solid financial footing. Only then we will fully deliver what our people deserve. Power that is more reliable, more resilient, and over time, way more affordable. In 2019, too many of our people measured the gap between promise and reality in every pothole, every flooded intersection, and every dark stretch of highway. Major arteries throughout the territory and streets in Christiansted and Charlotte Amalia have gone far too long without serious investment. And entire neighborhoods from Cyan Farm to Coral Bay were living with road connections and drainage that simply were not acceptable. And over the last 7 years, we have worked hard to change that picture in a systemic way. Working with our federal partners, DPW advanced priority surfing projects across the territory, including Queen Mary Highway on St. Croix, Centerline Road on St. John, and key roads on St. Thomas, with a balanced slate of projects in both districts. We rebuilt or rehabilitated signature corridors and community roads, Garden Street, Long Pat, Mountaintop, Ariel Melchior Drive, Savannah, Main Street, Mandela Miss Gun, to North Star Village on St. Thomas, and St. John, Fish Fry Road, Boulder Mountain, Francis Bay, and on St. Croix, neighborhood roads like Strawberry Hill, Wim, Estate Lorraine, Mount Pleasant, Herman Hill, Union of Mount Washington, Estate Richmond, Northside, King Street, and even more. Even on Water Island, we've paved 60% of the roads. I don't know how long that is. We tackled long-standing drainage problems at Coral Bay. Remember how Gallows Bay used to flood out throughout the downtown Charlotte Amalie? Lansing completed the First Avenue drainage project. It's complete now. And advanced road repairs in downtown Christiansted, where we paved the whole thing, and Frederickstead too, in phases so that our historic towns are now more beautiful and resilient. You remember in St. Thomas when all the roads were falling off the hill? Pilgrim Terrace, Clearview, Hull Bay, Bordeaux, and up Black Point. We shored up all of those things, ensuring those roads would last for decades to come. And as I look back from 2019 to tonight, the story of public work is that we move from patching problems to executing a real plan, delivering safer and smoother roads, better drainage, brighter highways, stronger bridges, and a more modern ferry and transit networks. We're not finished, but we're no longer stuck in neutral. No. When we took office, the Virgin Islands had no territorial park system. Our national parks were world class, but our local beaches and lands, all of them were at risk of being sold. I believe that some places should remain with us, the people, forever. By working with the legislature, and federal partners, we established the Virgin Islands Territorial Park System and created the Division of Territorial Parks and Protected Areas with DPNR to manage it. For the first time, the government has a dedicated team to protect our beaches, bays, forests, and keys. The system includes popular areas like Cass Key, Bavoni Key, and parts of Hassel Island on St. Thomas, Kramer's Park and Great Salt Pond on St. Croix, Oppenheimer Beach on St. John. These are locations where Virgin Islanders swim, fish, and gather. Now they're permanently designated as parks for future generations. We made the largest land conservation purchase in the history of the Virgin Islands it is now the Maroon Sanctuary Territorial Park, protecting almost 4% of the coastline on St. Croix. I believe our greatest achievement is ensuring that these lands will not be sold, but will remain in the hands of the people of the Virgin Islands forever. And long after the speeches and ribbon cuttings, families will still enjoy these parks. This is a legacy of a government that planned for the future, not just the next election. In 2019, our ports reflected years of underinvestment, and we chose to change course. On St. Thomas, we were allocated $25 million to dredge Charlotte and Mali Harbor, positioning WICO to welcome larger vessels and strengthen both tourism and cargo. I'm pleased to tell you tonight that after the second time for this going out, we do have 5 bids in, and we'll be awarding a contractor to get that started this year. We also secured the Tiger Grant funding for Crown Bay. We did it so well, we got 2 Tiger Grants. We have to get 1 back. And designated the Adelita Cancran campus for long overdue redevelopment. This year, we will begin demolishing that site to expand capacity and improve operations and unlock new opportunities on the waterfront. On St. Croix, we strengthened the container port by relocating freight from Gallows Bay and creating room for smarter port operations and more space for community and tourism. We upgraded the airport departure lounge and improved key facilities through public-private partnership, helping us attract and retain more airlift to the Virgin Islands. These are not isolated projects. They are connected investments in how we move people, move goods, and build an economy that is ready for what comes next. Over the last 7 years, we have transitioned from managing crises to crafting a comprehensive housing strategy. Working hand in hand with the Virgin Islands Housing Finance Authority, ODR, and EDA, we rolled out initiatives such as Envision, VI Slice, Own a Lot, Build a Home, to support home repair construction. We've made significant strides by completing numerous affordable and mixed income projects, adding or preserving over 643 units for seniors, families, and first-time home buyers, including 300 units for home in ownership, most of them available at Bellevue Village and Calabash Boom in St. John, also some in Loverland, creating new homeowners on the Little Island. In line with our workforce security initiative and Vision 2040, the Virgin Islands Department of Labor has moved from crisis management to strategic growth. On St. Thomas, we ended nearly 40 years of leasing and more than $9.7 million in rent payments when we purchased the Department of Labor building on Princess Garda. We also strengthened the systems at Labor, the Unemployment Insurance Trust Fund. This is one that's special to me because you know I was a labor commissioner. The trust fund grew to a debt of $100 million. The Great Recession, the refinery closure, and COVID created a chasm that we thought would never get fixed. For years, employers bore that cost. We acted and adopted to plan to fully retire that burdensome loan. Today, from $100 million, that debt is to $22 million now. This June, we will totally pay it off. Once again, our fund will be solvent and hiring employee will become less expensive for our business people. We consolidated government insurance and workers' compensation, collected $6.8 in employer contribution, and increased benefits. After years in the red, we have a workers' compensation system that is solvent once again. Thank you, Commissioner Malloy, and your team at the Virgin Islands Department of Labor. Education and training are the foundation of a vibrant economy and a thriving society. We have to give people, our people, access to the tools they need to compete if we are to grow as a society. Even before entering office, we set the stage. As a former senator in 32nd Legislature, Lieutenant Governor Tregenza Roach sponsored legislation providing free tuition at the University of the Virgin Islands for all Virgin Islands high school graduates. We further expanded that effort, and for the past 2 academic years, part-time and online students have had the opportunity to attend the UVI at no cost to them. We are the first state or territory to implement or maintain this in the country. Our priority in early education is yielding results. Test scores have been improving in our elementary schools. Pre-K classrooms are now in every single public school. We have increased graduation rates and test participation and proficiency in English language arts, mathematics, and science. Equally, we focused on ensuring Head Start remains relevant and the essential component of learning and development paradigm. We began with the renovation, in some cases, the total rebuild of 6 new Head Start learning centers. In September 2025, Cruz Bay Head Start welcomed learners. Once again, it is abuzz with young, precocious minds eager to explore the world. In 2026, we will add 4 additional Head Start. Thank you, Commissioner George and your team at the Village of the Department of Human Services. From the first day I took office, I had a simple dream. I wanted every talented young Virgin Islander to know that there's a real path to come home, serve their people, and build a world-class career right here. That dream took shape in 2021 when I unveiled the GVI Fellows Program, an internship designed to provide college graduates with training, exposure, and networking opportunities within their own government. To date, 54 college graduates and young professionals have served as GVI Fellows, placed throughout 12 departments and agencies. 62% of our fellows are still working in this Virgin Islands government. And 38% have gone to graduate school or in the private sector. Thank you, Director Cindy Richardson, for leading this effort. My commitment to growing this economy by strengthening our workforce did not begin or end with that effort. We signed union contracts, granted substantial salary increases, and ensured that the starting salary for teachers is now $52,500, not $44,000 like when we started. And the average starting salary for a nurse is $75,000. In fact, government salaries are up 25% on average, $10,000. And the average age of our employees has actually been reduced by 10 years. We're making government younger, stronger, and building a new generation of public servants who love these islands, understand our history, and have the skills to lead us into the future. When the next generation measures this era, it will see a government that finished the work that others talked about for 40 years. In one administration, we moved the land and water use plan from concept to reality, put GRS back on a path to solvency, paid long overdue retroactive wages, and secured permanent federal rum cover revenue so future leaders can plan with confidence. We made advancement to construct the first public high school in St. John and new schools across the territory, brought income tax refund close to being fully current, and opened the first new large hotel in more than 3 decades. We advanced our Bureau of Corrections and VIPD towards compliant with the consent decrees and turned WAPA away from pure fossil fuel dependence toward utility scale solar. We created the first territorial park system, restored the 8% salary cut that haunted our public service, unified fire and EMS so that our people receive improved emergency care. Taken together, these are the kinds of structural and generational changes that define a new era and set a new standard for what an administration should accomplish. But in the next 4 years, the Virgin Islands will face different challenges, different than what we inherited in 2019. Inflation and rising costs will keep testing household budgets and stretching the distance between wages and what life demands. The government's focus on construction and revenue indicates strong demand in the housing and infrastructure for years to come. By 2025, the U.S. Virgin Islands experienced an inflation rate nearly 3 times that of the mainland. 3 times. And it's only going to get worse. We are in the stages of recovery that will certainly test our capacity. Nearly $25 billion is not a talking point. It is clinics, classrooms, roads, and ports, power and public safety rebuilt to last. That opportunity requires people. Plans do not pour concrete. Funding does not wire a grid. The next 4 years will demand more skilled workers, stronger institutions, and the discipline to deliver with transparency and pride. Rebuilding is only part of the assignment. As we modernize clinics, schools, and ports, we must maintain them. It takes will to cut ribbon. It takes character to keep the lights on, the roof seal, the system service, and the standards high long after the cameras are gone. Maintenance is not glamorous, but it's the difference between progress that holds and progress that slips. The next administration will inherit real pressure. The road ahead is demanding. It's also worthy. If we meet it with skill, seriousness, and unity, what we rebuild will be more than just structures and continuity. It will be confidence, it will be capacity, it will be a future our children can stand on. And as we talk honestly, we must address the future of healthcare and infrastructure. And how do we pay for it? For 7 years, we have stretched every federal dollar, reprogrammed our budgets, and tightened our belts to stabilize this government. But if we want hospitals that truly meet modern standards and roads that are properly maintained, we cannot rely on federal support alone. At some point, we as Virgin Islanders must decide what level of service we want and what we are willing to get it, what we are willing to invest to get it. That is why I'm asking this body to consider placing a simple question before the voters at the next election. Let's call it a private citizen initiative that lets the people themselves decide whether to dedicate a small, targeted share of our own income towards priorities that touch every life in these islands. Under this initiative, people will be asked whether they support a 1% income tax dedicated solely to our hospitals to help fund the basic level of universal insurance so that no Virgin Islander is left without essential care. They would also be asked to whether they support a 1% income tax dedicated strictly to maintaining local roads for 15 years, and then it's done, with the option to support the maintenance of private roads that connect our neighborhoods and the communities. This is not a decision for one governor or for a legislature. It is a choice about our shared future, and I believe it belongs in the hands of the people. If the voters approve it, those funds will be locked in for these purposes, not to grow the government for its own sake, but to guarantee that our hospitals are open, staffed, and modern. When I first asked you to trust me with this office, I was a 40-something-year-old son of these islands with a head full of black hair and goals, and a heart full of concern for the future. I did not walk into Government House alone. I walked in with the great Tigrenza Roach, the cabinet of committed public servants, and with thousands of Virgin Islanders who believe that if we faced our hardest problems head on, we could move these islands forward. Tonight, I have given you a replay, a record of how we met the storms with grit, met a pandemic with discipline, met shifting federal winds with steady advocacy, and met setbacks with the kind of creativity small islands are forced to master to survive and thrive. We did not inherit ease. We inherited long-standing challenges, and we continue to meet them head-on. I stand here tonight knowing I am only one of 9 individuals elected by our people to lead this territory. I did not start this journey, and I will not finish it, because the stories of these Virgin Islands does not belong to any one governor. It belongs to our people, generation after generation, carried forward by love for home and the steady will to keep building this home. Tonight, I honor the service of these governors, Evans, King, Louis, Farrelly, Schneider, Turnbull, DeYoung, and Mapp. Each faced the challenges of their time and left lessons that shape what came next. Still, every administration is measured by what it confronts, what it chooses, and ultimately what it delivers. We are doing our work in our time, moving this territory forward. Yet the work of building a fair, safe, and prosperous Virgin Islands is never, ever going to be finished. And that is why I believe history will remember this season long after the speeches fade, the headline change, not by what we promised under the bright lights, but what we built when it was hard. Because this administration chose to do hard things. It will judge us by what we protected, preserved, and demanded for our people when it would have been easier to put it off, kick the can down the road, save it for tomorrow. In that way, I can say with a clear conscience, we did not simply manage the moment. we changed the course. We changed the course when we moved recovery from paper to pavement, from renderings to projects. We changed the course when we refused to let energy remain a permanent excuse and started to turning our grid toward the future. We changed the course when we stopped accepting a government held together by good intentions and chose responsible planning over political comfort. This is what progress looks like. Not perfect, not instant, but real. You see, real progress lasts when it is rooted in something deeper than policy and projects. So before I give you my final charge, I want to name what has always been our greatest resource, us, our people. We are more than a destination on a map. We are the laughter in the festival village, the rhythm of the bambula drum that pulls you forward, the hymn that finds you when you need strength. We are the hands that fix what breaks, the elders who remind us that dignity and integrity are not negotiable, and the young people who keep surprising us with the brilliance and the resolve. Now, let me be frank. We have not done everything. There are plenty of goals unfinished, problems still up stubborn, and work still waiting. But we are not standing still, and we continue to raise the bar. I will always be grateful to the people who challenged us, pushed us, and held us accountable, because that is the way a democracy stays strong. So tonight, I leave you with this charge. Do not let cynicism become our culture. Do not let cynicism become our culture. They have told me many times that it could not be done, and we did it. Do not let quick outrage replace careful thought. Do not let the difficulty of change convince you that change is impossible. Progress is not a spectator sport. The next chapter of self-governance in these Virgin Islands will require citizens who vote with purpose. Citizens who hold their leaders accountable without tearing down the whole house. And citizens who show up to build, because the work ahead is worthy work. So let those who do not understand our story say what they want. Let the storms come and go. Our anchor holds. It holds because of the work we have done as a people, together, united in pride and hope to change the course of these islands we call home. And here is what I know with every fiber in me, that if we hold our course, if we keep our faith strong and our standard high, then our best days are not behind us. They are certainly in front of us. God bless you, and God bless these beautiful Virgin Islands of the United States. Love you.
All right, and that was the governor's 8th and final State of the Territory address. I want to get your reaction from you, Kye. Give me some of your takeaways on the governor's address this evening.
Well, this address, of course, was much longer than, or somewhat longer than others, because he delivered to his best the summary of all of the accomplishments of his administration in the last 7 years. He also spoke to work that is forthcoming for the remainder of his term. Key takeaways were the examples of his bravery, the GRS saving, the VTOL infrastructure purchase. These are things that people told him could not be done. The rum cover-over and getting the permanent rate, and these are things that he strived to do and he accomplished. And he accomplished these things despite the naysayers who really should have supported him.
All right. Usie, give me some of your takeaways from the governor's address this evening.
Well, as I had mentioned in our opening, there was a great focus on the accomplishments that the governor identified in regards to infrastructure improvements. One of my major takeaways was what I mentioned earlier, the importance. I still, given the governor's State of the Territory address, don't have a real handle and what the revenues of the government of the Virgin Islands really look like in comparison to the expenses or expenditures that have to be made, and whether or not we have the financial footing that will take us through this coming fiscal year 2026. I think, for me, I always like to look forward to a State of the Territory addressing the financial picture and the economy of the territory.
Okay. Now, before I get Kurt and Conn's reaction, across the street from the legislature, dozens of people protested as the governor entered the building and began his address. Signs calling for better pay and fair contracts now showed several unions were represented, including the United Industrial Workers and the Seafarers International Union, the United Steelworkers, and the American Federation of Teachers. Now, in the governor's address, the governor said he signed union contracts, granted substantial salary increases, and ensured higher starting pay for teachers and nurses. Also saying that the government salaries are up 25% on average, or by about $10,000. Now, Kurt, how do we negotiate his speech with the presence of the unions kind of protesting outside?
I almost feel like it kind of summarizes my immediate response to the speech. I think it's tone deaf. If I'm going to be honest, as someone living on St. John, where the governor has held in 8 years in office one official public town hall, what's happening in ODR or in conference rooms or between GVI and federal entities is not translating on island. I mean, we have the library that was renovated without staff and it's already fallen apart. We have the Head Start that opened and was functioning months after the ribbon cutting was done because there wasn't an initial attempt to recruit staff and people to work in the space. The Battery was renovated, and instead of it being a community space that's accessible and used, the mansion pretty much lays dormant and is essentially a storage space. Lord Amboine's dock was legislatively renovated, the structure above it, but the dock itself is falling apart and crumbling. And there's talk about all these roads, paving projects that happen here and there, but they don't exist on St. John. And so if you live and work on St. John, and I know this exists in other places in the territory, what was said tonight does not translate to what we experience day to day.
Conn, I want to get your takeaways.
I think that the governor is an excellent speaker. He delivered a long and thorough account of really 8 years in office, more than 4. And I think he did a very good job highlighting not just the accomplishments, but also the scenario of where we were with regards to the financial standing and a number of other things, and also a picture of where we're going. But I can also understand where Kurt's coming from with his statements, because if you listen to any territorial or State of the Union address, it's highlighting all the high points. And on a day-to-day basis, we do deal with whether it be WAPA outages, whether it be road projects that haven't yet been completed or whatnot. So I think he did an excellent job highlighting all the work that's been done and a lot of the critical showing up that his administration did. I would give him an A on delivery and on touching the high points, but I think we deal with many challenges in the territory. That's the reality.
Yeah. Now, Usie, I know you talked about the expenditures and not having a full grasp of the territory's finances and where it lies, but was there anything else that the governor failed to mention that you were hoping to hear about?
Well, for me, one of my focus, particularly in listening to State of the Territory address, I really don't focus on what the governor didn't mention. I like to listen to the things and to address the things that he did in fact mention. For me, I think the most important thing, given the question that you asked that the governor probably didn't focus on, was I think the subject matter of accountability in government. The buck has to stop somewhere Each department, agency, and entity has leadership, and the leadership is responsible for ensuring the performance of those that work under his or her administration. And I think some of the things that he highlighted as successes, and also emphasized that the length of time they may have taken, goes down to the fact of the accountability of employees within departments and agencies working under leadership to achieve certain things. So in that particular instance, I think the performance of the government as an entity through its leadership and employees is something that was not mentioned and something that we need to focus on for future development.
Yeah. Kurt, I know we spoke about the lack of hearing something substantial for the island of St. John. Was there anything that was mentioned that you were happy to hear about, or that you were hoping that the governor may have drilled down a bit more on?
I think there were any number of points that at large everyone in the territory could be excited about, revolutionizing some of how we process permits or applications for licenses, things like that. Those are really good across the board processes that have been enhanced and improved. But I think just the overall quality of life is what was really missing. And I think in 8 years, we haven't really seen that level of like empathy and connectivity to people on the ground. And so while processes may be enhanced, while we might be changing laws to change how entities are operating, what people feel day to day and what people expect from their leaders has not followed the same. It hasn't told the same line. And so I think where we could improve processes and sing songs about them, but if we're not connecting to people in a way that's meaningful and substantive, then there's still always going to be a disconnect.
Yeah.
And I think that's unfortunate missed success.
Yeah. Now, some notes just that we noticed was that notably missing from the will was Health Commissioner Justa Encarnacion, who is tonight's designated survivor. But also something that I noticed was that notably the governor was not wearing that ceremonial, medallion that we've known the governor to wear at his last 7 State of the Territory addresses and all prior governors before. He was not wearing that. Key, any insights into why the governor chose to ditch that this evening?
I have no particular insights. I noticed it at the same time you did, but I must commend him. And like I said before, this particular governor is a particularly brave governor, and he is not afraid to do something different or step outside the box. And I applaud anyone from my culture who would remove what appears to be a chain, or it could be described in other ways, but for tonight we'll call it a chain, hanging from his neck. That is not a symbol that I think we should actually be portraying. So I commend him on his last State of the Territory from removing it. Now, it could have tons of meanings. Maybe he's going to be free soon. We don't know. But I do applaud him for removing those medallions from around his neck.
Yeah. Usie, your thoughts on?
Key just have me over here smiling.
Yeah.
I'm here laughing because I said the governor just recently visited West Africa. I think he would be truly embarrassed to sit in front of his invited guests wearing the vestige and the bastion of years of colonialism around his neck. And I think that too may have been one of the impetus that he have taken into consideration. He doesn't have to satisfy and meet the expectation of others in the past, but all these governors wearing this thing, and this has been something that I've talked about publicly, it's is a slap in the face to the people of the Virgin Islands to wear the, what do you call it? The chain of colonialism is what I called it, around your neck as you address the people of the Virgin Islands with no concern being shared in regards to the impact that it's had amongst the lives of the people of the Virgin Islands who have been here for generations,
Yes.
and even for those that are in the diaspora that came from these Virgin Islands.
Yes. Conn, any thoughts?
I think the governor's the governor, and he should wear whatever he wants. I think he looked great. I like the gray suit, and I think that traditions are meant to be changed over time, and if the new tradition is not to wear it, fine with that.
Kurt, I do want to get your thoughts on it. I always like to hear you so eloquently put it together as well, too.
I think I'm not sure what the reason was, and I'm not sure why at this point in history, but I think it's important. It's always important for us to be very critical about ourselves and our identity and how we perpetuate habits, whether they are, detrimental or motivational and inspirational. And I wish, in that same line of thought, I wish the governor mentioned some intent to fund and actually formally establish the Cultural Heritage Institute, which, if everyone is aware, was established by the same legislation that established the division of the division of festivals, the division of festivals. And so I think we have to face these things about ourselves. We essentially what we said by funding and establishing festivals and keeping the Fed moving, essentially what we said is the party can't stop.
Yeah.
But what does that say about our identity and who we envision ourselves to be, that the sister entity was not equally funded and supported and celebrated?
Kye, I know you said that you were happy to see the governor kind of ditch it. Are we hoping that this sets the precedent that future governors also choose to do away with wearing the medallions?
I hope so. And I have, watched either in the chamber or from home all of his State of the Territory addresses. And I would have to say that this is the first one where he had a high energy level from the beginning to end. Now, is that because he shed the weight of those ceremonial chains? I don't know. But I would say that it did have some impact on his delivery of the speech tonight.
Okay, all right. Now, we are going to continue this conversation. We are waiting to hear, from some of our lawmakers and stuff as they call in to give reactions raised and other key points. And at some point later on, we are going to hear from you, our viewers, as well, too. But I do want to stay here, the governor mentioned merging, Usie, I want to go to you, putting the Virgin Islands Lottery and the Casino Control Commission together under one arm. Give me your reactions on hearing that this evening.
I'm in full support of that. As a former member of the Casino Control Commission, I'm quite aware that throughout many of the states within the United States and in even some countries like Jamaica, they have a gaming organization or commission that regulates all type of gaming activities. And so the marriage of the Casino Control Commission with the Lottery Commission, which is also gaming, which would also include and should include the consideration of the horse racing entities of where there are racinos included at racetracks. We have in St. Thomas, we have the VLTs, which are not regulated by the Casino Control Commission. They're under the Lottery Commission. And so this consolidation could not only bring more revenues for the territory and better manage the revenues, but have a better regulatory system.
Okay. I want to come back to this point as our panelists, but we do have Senator Blyden on the line. Good evening, Senator Blyden. How are you this evening?
Fine. How you doing?
I am well. Now, I want to ask you, what were your takeaways this evening from the governor's address?
Well, honestly, my takeaway is I must say that he really was it was a very forward-looking speech. It was very, in terms of the pace of the speech, I think he spoke well in terms of the many accomplishments, in respect to his 8 years in office. But at the same time, though, it has left me very optimistic in terms of the way and the path moving forward. And I must say, he delivered. He was very passionate in his speech. But there's certain things I want to honestly speak to in that speech, because he spoke to the minimum wage, and he said he was the only advocate for private sector increase. But I want to remind him that last term, I was the main sponsor with Bill number 35-0332, along with Senator Frankie Johnson, to push for that minimum wage increase for the private sector. And we did it again this term, and it went through this term. But at the same time, it was not only until I wrote him several times, after a year, about the board in order to assure that those minimum wage increase were brought forward, the wage board. So I just wanted to mention that. And also, he spoke to the many accomplishments when it comes to the Envision program. And I am happy and glad to hear that they have done 90 homes, but I want to make it clear, crystal clear, that after 8 years, we have had 90 homes, but at the same time, we have had 1,600 homeowners who put in applications.
Okay.
So I just want to make that clear also, but I'm glad when it comes to even one home being done. I'm happy for those individuals. I just want to make that clear.
Well, I want to thank you so much for calling in, Senator Blyden. I truly do appreciate it.
Very well, and thank you so much for having me.
Have a great night. All righty. Now, on the line, we have, good evening. Senator Johnson, how are you doing this evening?
I'm fine, thanks. Good evening to all.
I want to get your takeaways very briefly before we get one of the panelists to ask a question. In 30 seconds, tell me your initial reactions to the governor's address.
Well, I first want to congratulate him on something that he stood up for, which is he spoke about the failures or the arrest of the commissioners, them that happened under his watch. So I'm glad that he acknowledged that, and that's not something that he wants to tolerate. I'm glad that he stood up about a couple other things that he mentioned that he wanted to deliver, and he delivered. Mm-hmm. But so in a small 30 seconds, I still have my disappointments for stuff that I thought that should have been done, that he promised to be fixed from 2023. So I have some upticks and some low parts of my position.
All right. Conn, do you have a question for Senator Johnson?
Yeah, I guess my question would be what, if you could choose one topic or one thing that was left to be desired in terms of something that which wasn't addressed or wasn't addressed adequately, what would that be?
Well, it wasn't addressed adequately about the roads in Frederiksted. He spoke about them from 2023, and they continue promising us about Strand Street, King Street, and Queen Street. And every day that I drive coming up on Queen Street, it's a nightmare. They said that in January they're going to start, and I just hope this time it happens. Because from 2023, we're talking about these roads. We talk about the hospital. In his state of the territory last year, Juan Louis Hospital was to be demolished in 2025. And we cannot continue delaying these projects, especially the hospital. Because what we're in a module hospital is a temporary that should have only been for 7 years, and we passed the time. So those things are very disappointing for me.
All right. Well, Senator Johnson, I want to thank you so much for calling in and speaking with us this evening.
Thank you very much. You guys have a wonderful evening.
All right, you as well. All right. Now, I want to go back to the conversation that we were having about the merger of the Casino Control Commission and Virgin Islands Lottery. Now, the governor did mention that he is preempted on that legislation, and Senator Clifford Joseph actually has that language. There is a portion of the bill, that we do have some correspondence that we were able to obtain. It is Senator Alma Francis Helliger retains authorship of a portion of the draft and request expanding casino gambling for the island of St. Thomas, but specifically a portion of his request, for creating a Virgin Islands Gaming Commission, that has been assigned for drafting. So Senator Joseph does have authorship of that bill. Kye, I want to ask you, is this something that, is long overdue? Is this something that, you see making significant progress in the Virgin Islands?
I think the record has shown that when we do consolidate, especially consolidate functions that are related, like what we did with fire and EMS, we do see benefits. It streamlines the process. We're integrating the process. We don't have the left hand doing one thing and the right hand doing another. So it is a good idea. I'm hoping that the preemption is an effort to move this policy forward as opposed to an effort to block it. That's what my hope is. But your expert on this panel on this subject is Usie, and when
Yes.
Usie said it's a good idea, I was convinced.
You're the first expert. All right. Well, we do have Senator Novo Francis on the line. Senator Francis, good evening. How are you doing this evening?
Hi, good evening. I'm doing fine, thank you.
Good. I want to get your reaction to the governor's address this evening. Do you think he addressed some of the concerns of your constituents?
I think mostly, he was able to address them. There's some areas that I believe that he had not touched on that would have been critical for them to also understand, especially when it pertains to behavioral health or mental health issues. I think just healthcare in general, I thought that a little bit more time should have been spent in that particular area, as it seems to have been the issue of the day that's occurring right now.
Lucy, do you have a question for Senator Francis?
Yeah, and good evening, Senator Francis. I know that you're currently in charge of the committee. What is it, Budget and Appropriations?
Budget, yes, Budget, Appropriations, and Finance.
Can you let me share with the listening audience what you gleaned about the current existing status of the financial standing of the government of the Virgin Islands in regards to revenues and the expectation of meeting the appropriations that have been made by the legislature? Did you glean anything from the State of the Territory address that you think could share with us?
Yeah, I think that I certainly were able to glean that the revenues continue to come in. However, based on the levels of expenditures, in light of our inflation situation, as well as the support that is being done with the semi-autonomous agencies, that our budget and revenues continue to be challenged in those particular areas. So it is critical that we're able to continue to collect our revenues. I think there was some mention about earmarking future budget to support the SLICE program, as well as some the healthcare initiatives and stuff that have moving forward there.
All right. Well, Senator Francis, I want to thank you for calling in and giving us your thoughts this evening.
You're welcome. All right.
On the line next, we do have Senator Clifford Joseph. Senator Joseph, we were actually just speaking about you. I want to get your takeaways on the governor's address this evening, and specifically, we were speaking about the fact that you preempt him on that legislation regarding the Casino Control Commission and the Virgin Islands Lottery. Your takeaways?
Yes, and I'll be having. I'll have all the information. I'll have it all together by the end of this month. By the end of February, we should have the language together. The BR number right now is 250181.
Okay. Now, any other takeaways from the governor's address this evening?
Yes. As far as the speech complete, I look at some key factors, like he spoke about the hospitals, he spoke about housing, but then we have an issue in LBJ Garden that I will continue to try and champion with some of my colleagues to make sure that those folks who are in LBJ Garden do not become mortgage holders or renters again, because you're talking about a community that folks spend their whole life paying a mortgage and now they become a homeowner and it looks like they need to be removed from that area. So I want to make sure whatever we do, we put them in homes that don't have a car, like right now how they live.
Okay. And I believe our panelist, Kurt Marsh, he has a question for you.
Okay.
Good evening, Senator Joseph. My question is actually pretty pointed, and since you mentioned housing, I want to get your response. As an ancestral St. Jonian living in St. Croix, and with the knowledge that 3,000 units are being built across the territory, but 0 are on St. John, are you concerned with that statistic, and are you and your colleagues having discussions about housing parity across the Virgin Islands?
Yes, I've had conversation with the chair of the housing committee. I'm the vice chair, and Senator Blyden and myself are really concerned with St. John, because even when you start to talk, even when he's speaking about the calabash boom, we really don't know the cost, because some of those folks are supposed to get them at a lower cost. Now that this whole deal is going through, they look like they're going to be going ready to return to a mortgage that's up to the ceiling this time.
But can I follow up?
Well, we do have another. We do have. I'm going to give you that. I wish I could give you the opportunity to follow up. But Senator Joseph, I do want to thank you for calling in. We do have another caller on the line. But thank you so much for your commentary this evening.
Thank you.
All right. Now, this evening, good evening, Delegate Plaskett. How are you this evening? Hello? Hello? All right. I think that connection was bad. So, Delegate, if you are listening, I would ask that you give us a call back. But, Kurt, hearing the response from Senator Joseph, I know you wanted to kind of follow up. Give us some thoughts on, the response that you got.
Well, my follow-up would have been Calabash Boom and Bellevue are existing housing communities, and the idea that the promise that was made when the residents moved in 20 plus years ago that they'd be paying, 15 years rent, 15 years mortgage, that promise being kept is them being made whole. What I'm concerned about is new units being built across the island, and none of those are slated for construction.
Yeah.
That is the real major point of concern. Virgin Islanders, many of them who have left after the storms have not been able to come back, not because they don't want to, but because they're displaced. And what are we doing to solve that problem about displacement?
Yeah. Now, we do have Senator James on the line. Senator James, good evening. How are you doing this evening?
I'm sorry, she stepped out.
Oh, okay. Okay. All right. Well, you can give us a call back when she is available. But, speaking of, while we were listening to the governor's speech, Kye, you and Kurt were sitting next to each other, as you are here on the panel as well, too. I believe you called him a little bit of a pessimist. Sorry to share y'all business now with the wider Virgin Islands public. But, hearing his comments and his concerns, what do you have to say to Kurt, regarding those comments as it pertains to St. John and, not really hearing much from the governor's speech this evening?
The concerns that Kurt raised, of course, I would say that they're legitimate concerns. And some of the concerns that he's raising are legitimate concerns that face the entire Virgin Islands. And while the governor delivered a lengthy speech tonight, he cannot capture every single one of the accomplishments in that one speech. He didn't mention the land swap for the school in St. John. He didn't mention the resident sales period for Bellevue and Calabash that we were talking about. Is not exactly what Kurt is looking for or what he mentioned just now, but it is a step for home ownership for at least 100 plus residents in St. John currently.
Okay.
There's the infrastructure projects that are planned, like the ferry service, the Spirit of 1733, that's also slated to provide infrastructure improvements to St. John and to provide infrastructure to the people of St. John. So, yes, he may not have mentioned everything that he has done for St. John, and of course there's still work to be done in St. John as well as St. Thomas and St. Croix.
Yeah.
But to suggest that he's done nothing for the island would definitely be unfair and contradicted by all that he's done in his term.
I feel like Kurt wants to respond, but we do have Senator Alma Francis Heiliger on the line. Good evening, Senator Francis Heiliger. How are you doing this evening?
Hi, good evening. How are you?
I am well.
I'm doing pretty okay.
Good. Now, I want to get your takeaways on the governor's address this evening. Were there any key issues that you were hoping to hear that the governor failed to address?
Well, the things that he did address and the way he presented them, some of them were a concern for me. I did appreciate him sharing about the positive strides we're making in tourism. He did express his disappointment at the fact that 3 of his cabinet members were convicted of corruption. My only concern with that is it always takes the federal government to step in as opposed to us locally leading the forefront with cleaning up corruption in our territory. As it relates to his discussion when he spoke about Walker, I kind of chuckled. I just assumed his speech was already printed before the people of the territory saw it. From Friday Saturday and Sunday with this constant power outage. So, I mean, I wasn't sure if a lot of it was vested in reality or wanting to put out a very good or positive speech as much as he could before he left office.
Okay.
Because, of course, this is the last one he'll be giving before his term is up.
Yes. Conn, did you have a question for the senator?
Yeah, sure. I'll respond with the same question that I had previously, which would just be if there was anything left out of tonight's address or that wasn't highlighted to the degree that you'd like it to be, what would that have been?
The things in regards to being highlighted, I really wanted a little bit more when it comes to our health care here in the territory. We've been talking about vacating this hospital for years. We've invested in building out a temporary one, which I think they told us the lifespan is already up. It's a lot of things that we saw over the last 7 into 8 years. I was one of those that was apprehensive at the beginning and excited to see where this change was going. But at the end of the day, it is what it is.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Senator Alma Francis Heiliger, for calling in and for giving us your thoughts. We truly do appreciate it.
Not a problem, and you guys have a blessed night.
You as well. All right. Now, on the line, I do have the Senate President, Milton Potter, on the line. Senator Potter, good evening.
Hi, good evening.
How are you doing this evening, sir?
Excellent, Ms. Douglas.
All right. Now, I want to get your takeaways from the governor's final State of the Territory address this evening.
Well, just in general, the governor, this was a lengthy State of the Territory address, and I think the governor sort of used this time to reflect back from when he first took office 7 years ago. And, I think he said he was laying the foundation so that folks can actually see what he inherited and where we are today. I would have liked the governor to talk a little bit more about education, the state of education. He mentioned Arthur Richards Jr. K-8 school that is on the verge of being completed, which is a major accomplishment for sure. He spoke about the fact that we're going to have more schools coming online soon. My concern is today. I know down the line that is going to happen, and we're poised to begin building new schools. But the hundreds and thousands of Virgin Islands children who are currently occupying schools that are in bad shape, what is the plan for them? Like BCB Junior High School and Lockhart School, are these schools that are in bad shape right now? What is the interim plan between now and the delivery of good schools, of brand new schools? I would have liked for him to elaborate a little more on that. I would have liked for him to talk a little bit about the state of agriculture. Are we serious about putting a dent in the amount of foods that we import, 98%? I would have liked for him to at least mention it and talk about, the plan for addressing this. We will never be able to grow everything, but can we grow 25%?
Yes.
Can we set a goal of that? Those are just two right off the top of my head, two things that I would have liked for him to talk a little bit more about with a greater degree of specificity.
Okay. Usie, did you have a question for the Senate President?
Good evening, Senate President Potter.
Hey, Senator Richards.
Listen to your commentary. What do you see as the legislature's role and under your leadership as Senate President to keep the executive branch feet to the fire in regards to the conditions of the school systems and the various facilities throughout the territory? What do you say your role is in regards to that?
Absolutely, Senator Richards. We have oversight responsibility. We bring them here. We ask for a plan, give us a strategic plan, tell us where we are, tell us what's the timetable for, making progress. What's the timetable for our young people, being placed in an environment where it's conducive for learning. Those are some of the things that we do on a regular basis. But of course, we don't run the executive branch. We try to
get some tangible, concrete feedback as to where we are and what's the plan for moving forward. But that is really our primary role as legislators.
If I may just to quickly add this, I know you don't run the executive branch, you're not responsible for the schools. I'm sure that you're familiar with some legal history where the former Commissioner of Education, then the late Dr. Charles Turnbull, was physically handcuffed, arrested, and charged. And that was because of a senator that had a child in the public school system. And so I think if we don't try to move down these kind of roads, then we just can't throw the apple back out to the people and say, okay, it's in the executive branch and we have to take some control.
We'll definitely step up our game and take more assertive steps towards, getting questions answered and just basically seeing improvement. I mean,
well, we'll look forward to that action, Senator Potter. No, it's okay. Senator Potter, I want to thank you so much for calling in and for speaking with us this evening.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your time.
All righty. Now, I do believe that we are able to connect with the delegate once again. Delegate Plaskett, good evening.
Hi, good evening. How are you all doing?
We are well, Delegate. Now, we want to get your reaction and your takeaways this evening from the governor's address.
Sure. Well, I thought it was very informative for us to hear the governor give a recap of basically what has happened during his administration and going through his time in office and what he believes have been the highlights of the time that he is there. And I thought for me, the things that I came away with was really the whole of government working together for the people of the Virgin Islands. In his discussion of many of the initiatives, I know that those could not have been done without the support of the legislature, as in GERS and even putting the securitization together, or things, other components that were there as well. When he talked about the tax, bringing the tax checks, the refunds to individuals, or the 8%. That, of course, was an agreement that he made with the legislature to earmark funding that I had secured by getting the earned income as well as the child tax credit reimbursed to the Virgin Islands, which is bringing us between $20 and $40 million each year. So I think that in many ways, much of the work that he's discussing is really a lot of federal foundation, and then the utilization by his office in its execution, along with the legislature, which has approved and put forward many of the bills that have brought this about. That was really helpful to me to hear. The things that I thought were missing, however, was discussions, of course, about with some specificity about what was going to happen in this last year in office. But then also there were, such as in education, while we are doing all of this rebuilding with the federal funding that we're receiving, what is going to be happening programmatically to our schools? Yeah. While we are increasing our rate of graduation, we know that our proficiencies in reading and in math are not what they should be, or not what they could be, yes. Not what our children have within them. And then, there were areas such as mental health and homelessness, which I think are really important. And being someone who has an office in Frederiksted, lived in LaGrange for many years, not hearing exactly what's going to happen with Paulie Joseph, which is kind of hung out there for for a long period of time, as well as just general rebuild of the towns and our agriculture, were things that I would have really liked to have heard from.
Yeah. Now, Kirk, I see you shaking your head here. Do you have a question for the delegate?
Not necessarily, but I will add that some of what she outlined as expected dialogue are things that I share the same sentiments for. I wish there was more of a sort of a synopsis of the intent of time spent in the last year in office.
Okay. Usie, question for the delegate?
No, I don't have a particular question. I could just offer a comment that she might be able to respond to. And given the governor's presentation, what do you see as the role and the relationship between the delegates office in Washington, D.C., and the administration in the success of some of the things that he's pointed out?
Well, I was very interested in hearing many of the components that he was talking about and, things that are happening here in the Virgin Islands. And like I gave as an example, that 8% being paid back and the tax checks that are coming are really based on work that my office did in securing the earned income tax credit and the child tax credit that's bringing annual funding that the legislature then earmarked for that, as well as even discussions about the port fees that were proposed in the Trump administration, and my office being me sitting on Ways and Means and sitting on the Trade Subcommittee, being able to ensure that it was not just the Virgin Islands, but the entire Caribbean has an exemption from that. And I think, listen, this is what I've said in the MAP administration, where I was the delegate then, as well as the governor's office, is that I think that the bipartisan work that I've shown in the House, having multiple dozens of, I have 40 pieces of legislation that are bipartisan. I've demonstrated that members of the House work with me on both sides of the aisle, that it's important for the governor to lobby the Senate for us, because we do not have representation in the Senate, as well as working the executive branch in the with the White House. That is really a great marriage and a way of us hitting all the points together, not stepping over each other and not duplicating efforts. I'm grateful when the legislature comes up and I can target them to places where I'm not able to go. And the legislature has come up several times in that discussion of the rum cover over. Members of the legislature, VLA, Novell Francis, Milton Potter, and others came up and talked with other members of Congress in both the House and the Senate to get that done.
And that is something that we have discussed in the past, Delegate Plaskett. And I do want to thank you so much for calling in this evening and for speaking with us. We really do appreciate it.
Thanks so much. You guys take care.
All righty.
Thanks for all your work.
Thank you. All right. Now, as we wait for, other senators and, for more to call in, I do want to, I believe we do have a senator here on the line. Senator Gittins, good evening. How are you this evening?
Hi, blessed.
Good. I want to get your takeaways on the governor's address this evening.
Okay. How you doing?
I'm good.
I'd hope the State of the Territory address would have provided clearer directions and more concrete solutions to, our more pressing challenges. And what I did was I recapped on what he first stated back in 2019 during his first State of the Territory address. And for one thing that stuck out is when he spoke to healthcare and hospitals, in 2019 he had actually pledged to prioritize the reconstruction of the Roy Lester Snyder Hospital and the Wang F. Louis hospitals in both districts, as well as the St. John Clinic. However, neither hospital has moved beyond the planning and discussion stages. The people were promised action, and what we have seen instead is delay and stagnation when it comes to these projects in particular. And then another area that I was also looking at was education, where he committed back in 2019 to actually retooling the career and technical education and expanding access for students. Despite repeat commitments, there's been little to no implementation. We meaning the legislature, enacted back in 2021 Act 8506, which mandates emergency medical service training at the high school level. This is now 4 years later, and the law remains largely unimplemented, denying students real workforce opportunities. So that was a disappointment
All right.
Now,
well, I do want to give one of the panelists an opportunity to ask you a question, Senator Gittens. I'm going to go to Kye for a question.
Good evening, Senator Gittens.
good evening. How are you?
With regards to health care, did you have any thoughts on the governor's citizen initiative, where he talked about attributing 1% of the income of residents and to have that applied towards funding some of the health care needs of the territory? Did you have any thoughts on that?
So that will be good and a step in the direction to help our healthcare facilities. However, I want to see implementation and all these plans and projects and whatnot. So I just want to see movement. He did state that that the state of the territory is anchored in progress, and we all know that with progress comes change, and that's one of the things that our people don't solidly embrace.
All right. Well, Senator Gittens, I want to thank you so much for calling in this evening. We appreciate it.
All right, thank you.
All righty. Now, we do have Senator Viale on the line, Senate Majority Leader. Mr. Viale, how are you this evening?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I am well. I want to get your takeaways on the governor's speech this evening.
Quite a lengthy address, just about 2 hours. I think it contained a lot of excerpts from the last 7 years of the state of the territory, a lot of snippets, spoke about the coronavirus, spoke about tourism increasing in 2021. There wasn't a lot of specific in terms of the path moving forward for the next 11 months. And I really thought that he was going to lay out a comprehensive plan for the last 11 months in office, in which we would know how he was going to address many of the lingering problems that we're facing on a regular basis, the large number or the large increase in the homeless population and the individuals who are walking around with mental health issues. I thought there had been a lot of more concrete information in reference to the rebuild of Wang F. Louis Hospital, a start date that the contract was finalized and completed. I thought there had been discussion in reference to Parley Joseph Stadium and the actual completion date or the failure of the contractor to complete by the due date of Christmas, and he would speak about a breach of contract for that contractor. So I was waiting for more specifics, but the positive were the unemployment trust fund is going to be solvent, the work of motor vehicles, the GRS stabilization fund, which is one of the initiatives that the legislature also worked on. And I think that a number of initiatives in the legislature he didn't give due credit to. The stabilization fund, in fact, was the result of the legislature mandating that the monies go towards the retirement system, the Hotel Development Act, which is one of my bills, and next some further amendments are going to be coming to that particular bill. I didn't think he gave credit. The minimum salary for government employees, that was vetoed, overridden, and still has not been fully implemented. So I'm hoping that moving forward, a lot of the pressing issues that the people are looking for that we're going to get solved, because what you heard isn't really the reality of the regular person driving on the streets or going to work on a regular basis. It's not the reality as to what they're seeing.
All right. Well, Senator Viale, I want to give the one of the panelists an opportunity to ask you a question. Conn Davis is here on our panel, and I believe he has a question for you.
Good evening.
Yes, go ahead.
Good evening, Senator. As an educator, I didn't hear quite as much about education that I would have liked to tonight. A lot of things are changing radically and drastically in 2026 and going forward. How well do you think we're doing in academically arming our students, and what more can be done to help produce citizens that can not only compete here in the Virgin Islands, but really globally in what's a technologically rapidly changing environment?
We still have a lot of work to do. He briefly went over test scores, but the increase in test scores were not where I wanted to see them. But I think the first thing that we really need to do is make sure that the students are in school for 180 days. We have lost a substantial amount of school days because of weather or because of WAPA, especially at St. Thomas. So schools with mold, they had abbreviated schedules. So we need to, as much as possible, resume having normal school days across the territory that would enable the teachers to really be able to educate the students. I didn't hear any discussion in reference to Bertha Bush School, which is on a shortened schedule as to what are the plans for the school moving forward for next school year. We heard a brief discussion in reference to John H. Woodson that is going to be closed, but you didn't hear the specific plans as to what is actually going to happen. From what I have gathered, John H. Woodson will not be going to the New Alta Ridges, but will be going to the Eulalie Rivera campus. But I really was hoping to hear a focus on education that included creating programs for those students that are not at grade level, that they would have after-school program or extended school day or mandatory summer programs for our students who are not at grade level to try to get them up to where they're supposed to be, because we know that the learning loss was great. During COVID, we lost like 2 years, literally academically, as a result of COVID.
Yes. Well, Senator Viale, I do want to thank you so much for calling in and for giving us your thoughts. We really do appreciate it.
Okay, and thank you so much.
All righty. Now on the line, we do have Senator DeGraff on the line. Good evening, Senator DeGraff.
Good evening.
How are you this evening?
I'm fine, thank you. Happy New Year to everyone.
Happy New Year to you as well, sir. I want to get your takeaways on the governor's speech this evening, some high points for you, and maybe some things that you wanted to hear about.
Okay, first of all, I'd like to say, well, if anything, thank you for his service to the people of the Virgin Islands as the elected governor, serving 2 terms. However, I basically wanted to hear about the senior population in terms of one issue when you hear the hospitals who are having dire situations, talk about orders in hospitals because we don't have any senior facilities to put some of these people into. So I would have liked to have heard about the seniors with some of the money from the Jeffrey FC money I was trying to get started on St. Thomas and St. Croix, a senior facility on each island. So something along the line with what we could do for our seniors. The governor mentioned also about, I think he said at the end of his administration, a $70 million cash reserves. I think that's a great thing. But in terms of some of the issues that I know the finance have behind on getting out allotments and different things like that, it makes me wonder, how you have this cash reserves and then you have issues where getting allotments out to the departments has become dire situations also. Mm-hmm. He stated, he admitted that, hey, he wasn't finished. I got it, but when you talk about all this building that's supposed to take on, you haven't spoken about a workforce. You always been mentioning about having or needing a workforce. A hotel was built in 14 months here on St. Thomas. So, maybe that company should have been a company to try to get some of these schools completed, try to work on getting the hospital moving forward for our healthcare system. There's a couple of things I wanted to hear. Would you come down for your 8th year? And basically, I don't see all of these things getting accomplished at all in this administration.
All right. Usie, did you have a question for the senator?
No, not at this point.
Okay. Kurt, any questions? Any questions on the panel for the senator?
Sure. Senator DeGraff, did you have any thoughts on the governor's proposed private citizen initiative?
Excuse me, his proposed
citizen initiative.
The citizen initiative, the 1%.
Gross tax on
well, me, I definitely totally, vehemently disagree with it. Again, it's about, I've always had a problem with the taxation of the people of the Virgin Islands, adding on any taxation. Then you stay for 15 years, possibly it ends up permanently, and the people are always the one that get taken advantage of. So I'm an advocate for the people. I don't agree with that at all. 100% disagree.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your thoughts, Senator DeGraff. We appreciate you calling in and speaking with us this evening.
Mine. Thank you very much. Continue doing what you're doing.
Thank you. Good evening, Senator Joseph. How are you this evening?
Good evening.
Very briefly, I want to get your takeaways, some high points from the governor's address this evening. Before I get a question, allow one of the panelists to ask you a question.
Well, a pleasant good evening to you and all the panelists, and of course to the people of the Virgin Islands. My takeaway from the governor's speech, he was very upbeat. He was energized. He was optimistic as well, and he clearly laid out the accomplishments of his administration and also a number of things that we still have yet to accomplish. And one of the things that stuck out came at the end of his speech with his proposal to put a referendum for 1% increase in income taxes that would go towards our hospital. And so it was a lot of food for thought. We have worked with the governor. Yes, we'd have our little spats, but the whole thing is that we love our people, and we could get above all of those differences, rise above that to definitely move our islands forward.
Any of the panelists here, do you have a question for Senator Joseph?
Well, I would just, and I'm sure there's more that'll come out, but as I read it, there was a 2% tax. There was a 1% tax dedicated to the hospitals and a 1% tax, so that would be a gross tax on income. Yeah, I think that'll get a lot of pushback.
I was just focusing on the 1% for the health. I wasn't totally sold on the other 1%.
Okay, all right. Well, thank you so much, Senator Joseph, for calling in and for giving us your thoughts this evening.
And thank you so much for having me, and thank you all to the panelists, too. Thank you so much. Good evening.
All righty. Now, good evening, Senator Frederick. How are you this evening?
Good evening. How you guys doing?
Good. I would like to get your takeaways from the governor's address this evening before we take a question from one of the panelists.
Well, overall, it was optimistic. It's like a celebratory speech before you leave a job that you're ready to leave. He talked about his accomplishments, which makes sense. The bridges that were built and the roads that were fixed. It's pretty much boilerplate what I thought. I was hoping he would have talked more about what he's done in terms of economic development, placements, so that when he leaves, then we could say that, okay, now the economy should be producing another 10,000 jobs or whatever the number is, because we've set up this in place and set that in place, but that wasn't in there. He didn't say anything about agriculture, and I thought food security was one of the key things that we all agree was important to us, but it was his speech, so he spoke about the challenges they met when they came in and what they did to try to resolve those things. So.
Yes. Now I want to go to the panel. Anybody has a question for the senator?
I do.
Okay.
Considering the proposed additional income tax on Virgin Islanders, Senator, don't you think there are other means by which we can acquire the funds to spread across the territory to give services to the Virgin Islands people? For example, over the course of 20 years, as we all know to be fact now, Jeffrey Epstein got about $300 million in tax breaks from the government of the Virgin Islands. Don't you think revamping and revitalizing maybe the EDC program so that the government of the Virgin Islands receives greater profit that they can then share to the people of the Virgin Islands, don't you think those are better means by which we can provide services to the people?
In my industry, we call that a leading question. But
So I want to remind everyone, we still need to be competitive for companies when they come and they want to do business in the Caribbean. Right now, we're getting our butts beat by Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico is a much better deal to do business with because it has a lower cost of living, it has better transportation, better infrastructure, a more educated workforce. So we need to be competitive. And if we start taking away from the EDC program that we have, that's not going to help us.
Okay, all right.
So what I would suggest we would do is find other cost-saving measures to come up with that simple 1% that the governor spoke about. That doesn't. I didn't think it was necessary to raise taxes for something like that. We waste more than enough money. We could easily cover that as a government. So more efficient spending of our dollars, yes. Doing away with the one program that will help bring in some companies here, hopefully, I don't know if that's a good idea. Because we definitely need that program to bring companies here.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Senator Frederick, for your thoughts. We appreciate you calling in this evening.
Not a problem. Take care, guys.
Now, I want to go to, we're speaking about this 1%. Kind of want to go to, you brought up a point here. I want to go to the investment banker for a moment. The senator did just mention Puerto Rico as well, too. And I think it's interesting, there is the fine line of being a territory, in being able to attract business. But an issue that I think also Puerto Rico is facing is they are losing a lot of their local footprint as well, too. And we are much smaller than Puerto Rico versus the millions that they have. And if Puerto Rico is saying, hey, we are millions and we're losing our local footprint, but hey, we're open to business. Is there a way in the banking industry for us as Virgin Islanders to think about how do we ensure sustainability for the local person while also attracting outside business?
Well, I think the Economic Development Authority is a program that is critical. If you look at the numbers in terms of tax collection, it tells a very different story than most people know. You've got about 88 taxpayers in the Virgin Islands that account for 66% of income tax. So as opposed to, in Puerto Rico, you've got over 2,000 beneficiaries in their program. So from my math, my goal would be to increase the number of participants, because that's one taxpayer per every 1,000 residents that has 2/3 of the disparity of tax, right? So Puerto Rico's got a little bit of a different scenario. It's a different ball of wax over there, but they've got a mirrored tax code. They've got a very similar program. Some people like the program here. Some people like living here. Some people like living there. As he said, there's transit. JetBlue's got direct flights, its own terminal. As do we, but there's different advantages, and there's advantages to each location. But I would say that from an economic development standpoint, the easiest way to move the needle would be to try to really press, especially now as you have large amounts of capital, over $1 trillion in the last month, leaving California, leaving New York, leaving New Jersey, leaving high tax domiciles, to compete for that, to compete for a greater amount of that, because even 10 or 15 relatively large taxpayers could equate to a very, very large percentage of our gross tax revenues without touching the 1% on our population.
Yeah.
Well, could I add something?
Go ahead. Sure.
Because I don't want the gentleman to miss the point that was being raised by Kurt in the subject matter of EDA. And people need to understand that today under that program, you could get income tax exemption, both corporate and income, up to 90% exemption. You have 100% exemption on gross receipts tax, property tax, excise tax. And so that when Marsh made mention of that, the legislatively, as far as the legislature is concerned, consideration now needs to begin to try to at least reduce the percentage of taxes that the EDA can offer to beneficiaries. And if not only reduce them, then you designate a certain portion of what they pay, specifically like the 1% for hospital care or whatever type of services needed in the government. And I think that's the point that he was trying to make there.
And I think that is an important distinction, right? To not reduce the benefits, but as part of the program, you are required to donate a certain amount to charity. And I think what's missing from the program is that charitable donation is not targeted. So you have some EDC companies that create their own foundation. You have some EDC companies that donate to their special project. And I think what should happen is that program should be incorporated into the needs of the entire territory. So you 3 EDC companies, you donate to this school. You 3 EDC companies, you donate to this hospital.
Yes.
And I think that I think is something that should be looked at. But I am in agreement with Senator Frederick. I don't think we should reduce the benefits because I think it will render that program less competitive, and we may lose
I do want us to continue this discussion. I do want Kurt to be able to give his final thoughts on it as well too. But we do have Senator Avery Lewis on the line, so I want to go to the senator. Senator Lewis, good evening. How are you?
I'm all right. How are you doing tonight?
We are well. I want to get your takeaways on the governor's, speech this evening. I think the last time that he did this speech, you were a part of the administration still. I don't know if I still have my timelines. Things are moving very quickly.
No.
No, you weren't. That is my apologies. That is my apologies.
I was just a freshman coming in.
You were a freshman coming in. And now, going into this is the second year now,
Yes.
kind of getting your bearings as well too. What are some of the takeaways from the governor's speech? Maybe some things that the governor didn't mention that you are hoping to hear?
Well, I would say tonight, I think the speech was a okay speech. I think it was a very, intriguing speech that he gave, from a good recapping speech from where he came from, what he met, where he's going. I was glad that he talked very early in the speech about corruption and, that plagued his administration in the later part, and how he stands to, with all the ethics concerns and making sure that corruption is not a part of his administration, and he plans to stamp it out no matter what. Talk about the procurement processes. The governor highlighted some key stuff. He talked a lot about his rebuilding and envision programs and, the infrastructure and hardening the infrastructure and making things better. I really was thinking we're going to hear a little bit more about mental health and assisted senior living care centers, and so forth. But, all in all, the speech, I'm going to take some time to reread tomorrow and digest it and dissect it and, start to work together collaboratively to make some meaningful legislation to make things happen. I know one thing for sure, with all this rebuilding, we really need to work on our workforce development in the territory. We need to work on our education system. We need our young people to be involved, to get involved. We're going to may have to create some more public-private partnerships, because these are modernized facilities. We have to rebuild them, we have to staff them, we have to maintain them. And that's a cost as well, he kind of alluded to in there, for maintaining these new structures and so forth.
All right. Now I want to give the panel the opportunity to ask you a question. Anyone on the panel has a question for Senator Lewis?
If I could try, I don't know if Senator Lewis got a little taken aback with that big friendly hug that he got at the beginning when the governor greeted him, and whether or not after that hug, he was still able to listen into the State of the Territory address. But my quick inquiry is, I know you chair the Committee on Government Operations, I believe, and Consumer Protection, and was it Veterans?
Yes.
Veterans Affairs.
And in your capacity, do you see anything that may have been lacking or should have been addressed during the presentation by the governor in his address this evening?
Well, tonight he talked about inflation and so forth, but he really didn't digress and really elaborate more like where we're going with it and how we plan to solve some of the issues. He talked about new economic stuff, but he didn't really delve in deep in it. I know one of the things that I'm working on right now is with the Department of Licensing and Consumer Affairs to see what different mechanisms and methods, legislations we could put in place to bring relief to the people, especially with the gas prices and the fuel around in this territory. Right. And our prices in our grocery stores, to see what the legislation could do to try to bring some relief on that end for the people of the burden.
All right. Well, Senator Lewis, I do want to thank you for calling in and for giving us your thoughts this evening.
And I want to thank WTJX for all they do every day for the people of the Virgin Islands.
Thank you very much. All right. So I want us to hit play on that conversation that we were having. And I want to go back to you, Kurt, because I wanted you to be able to kind of give your thoughts. I know, we were hearing the reactions from your fellow panelists. That conversation about the EDA and how we are looking at that EDC benefit. Speak to me on, what you've heard and, just your thoughts.
So a lot of these topics I come to from a very personal experience regarding industry or having friends or family, etc., that work in these spaces. And so on the conversation about the EDC, my statement was to revamp the program such that there's more equity and parity across the beneficiaries, which also should include the people of the Virgin Islands. We have local companies that pay $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 a month in gross receipts taxes. They don't have 90% tax breaks anywhere. Yep. They are penalized when they can't make their payments. These are companies like Love City Car Ferries or Big Red Barge that run critical lines of connection across St. Thomas and St. John, because as we will recall, St. Johnians have to come to St. Thomas for any number of things. And there's no benefit to these companies. Meanwhile, we have no dry dock facility on St. John for them to maintain these vessels. We don't have water and power at the facility that was built 20 years ago that was supposed to alleviate that burden. But Port Authority is increasing the fees. So Love City Car Ferries is going from paying $200,000 a year in fees to Port to maybe $600,000 a year. So these companies provide critical services to the people of St. Thomas and St. John in particular, and they don't get these kind of handouts from the government of the Virgin Islands. And so what I'm saying is, if we're going to have these programs that attract people here to do business, we also should incentivize the people who are providing critical services to the people of the Virgin Islands day to day through companies that are built for and by Virgin Islands people.
Yes.
There has to be equity and parity.
What's the other side of that equation?
The other side of that is that people don't have services. The other side of that is the barge companies shut down and then we don't get across the water.
Where's the other side of that equation where to generate more revenue for the territory, you have to increase the base, right? So and I hear you and I'm with you on parity, I'm also a business owner. However, if every single business were granted those benefits, what would happen to the tax base? You don't have to cut me off, sir. I respect your opinion. I'm sure you respect mine, even if you don't agree with it. I respect that you have one. But the EDA is designed to attract businesses to the territory. That program is not designed to extend or offer or maintain. Do our local businesses need some help? Definitely, certainly. Costs rise, fees rise, and their obligations to the government and the people of the Virgin Islands don't rise or don't decrease with that. But the EDA program is designed for a specific purpose, and that purpose is to attract businesses to the territory and to attract economic development, to expand the taxpayer base. So what I hear and what I think the governor hears as the ultimate representative of the people who's supposed to be serving the people is, yes, there are these problems, but where are the solutions? So when I ask what's on the other side of that, I'm not asking about the parity. I'm asking about if every local business got the same tax benefit that the EDC companies receive, what would that do to our revenue generation and our tax base? Yeah. So that's the question that I pose to you. What is the other side of this issue that you have raised?
Attorney Walker, not every local business
It's okay, we're not
every local business, but the businesses especially that provide critical needs.
Yeah.
I've made that point several times. Critical needs.
Yeah. All right. I do want us to shift gears now. I know this is a topic that we can continue, and we can spend the entire night here speaking on this.
Unfortunately, I won't be here all night.
But I want to shift now. We don't want you to miss the last boat. I want to shift now, though, to the initial deployment of the Real-Time Crime Center. I want to speak a little bit about public safety, where the governor said specifically, quote, with the initial deployment of the Real-Time Crime Center, we have a modern hub that brings together cameras, license plate readers, and data analysts to support investigations and guide patrols. And this is a 21st century policing in a small territory, and it's already making a difference. I want to ask, Usie, are you seeing a difference in public safety with the use of technology?
I'm here listening to you, and I don't know which reggae artist that was when he was asking us, please tell us who are the real criminals. Mm-hmm. So my mind went down. But in regards to community policing I think the people of the Virgin Islands is really suffering from the non-existence of it. The ability for the community to be seen, to be part of the community throughout the territory, from Coral Bay to Coos Bay, right down to Fredericksted, to Christiansted, Charlotte, Mali, to Tutu. You don't see the interaction as if the police are part of the community. And so that we have drive-by shooting, but we have drive-by policing. The police them driving by and don't interact with the people that they're supposed to serve and protect. So to answer your question directly, I'm not seeing a real change in the orientation of what police should be in a community. What policing is today is we want to follow up on criminal activities in comparison to the prevention, integration, and education of the community to the real role of policing within any community that we all should think of.
All right. Now, before we continue, I do want to go to Senator at Large Angel Bolquez Jr., who is on the line. Good evening, Senator Bolquez. How are you this evening?
Good evening. I'm good.
All right. Now, I want to get your takeaways on the governor's address this evening.
I believe it was upbeat. It was a pretty broad address. It was not detailed or specific in any regard in the sense of touching on critical issues. There was no mention of agriculture or food security. Also, there was a number of capital projects on the island of St. John that we didn't hear about, to include the fire station, human services, the rec center, and the retrofitting of the Virgin Islands Police Department station over there. And of course, he did touch on the clinics, but for most part, it was a broad, upbeat address, and he rolled out the red carpet, sort of reigniting his accolades from the inception of his terms from the beginning up until now. So, for most part, I think there was a few gaps in between that one.
All right. Well, I want to give the panel an opportunity to ask a question. Anyone on the panel has a question for Senator Bolquez?
Well, unfortunately, we're not going to let him get off free. What you said, somebody better ask him something, so I'll jump in there. Because you are, in fact, the chairman of the committee on, what's that, culture, youth, aging. What is your opinion on the lack of anything in the State or Territory address about the growing senior population that seems to have not been addressed in the presentation?
Agreed. You're absolutely correct. There was no mention of the senior population. I did have a piece of legislation, 36-0003, that dealt with the assisted living and senior homes pertinent to the minimum requirements that they should be able to be provided. But a lot of it dwells on CMS certification for the Virgin Islands. And we know that we do not have CMS certification, and we're working towards it. But you make a very valid point that he did not also mention the aging population, and definitely in regards to that, we need to do some work in that area.
And I will definitely look forward to hearing from you. I think I'm the only one on the panel that is a card-carrying senior citizen ID member. So
I believe at the moment you are.
Yeah, so that is something that I think there are a lot of listeners and a lot of people, because we are a growing aging community, would like to know, from the legislature and the executive branch about some of the focus towards the needs that they would like to see being met.
All right. All right. Well, Senator Bolquez, I want to thank you so much for calling in and giving us your thoughts this evening.
Most definitely, and thank you to the panel, and thank you to WTJX for always covering these very important addresses. Thank you very much, and have a good evening.
All right, you as well. All right, I want to go back to the conversation that we were having before Senator Bolquez called in. We were talking about community policing. We spoke about it briefly while we were outside. Conn, you had some thoughts as well, too. I want to get your thoughts on, what the governor's comments were, or maybe lack thereof, when it comes to community policing in the territory.
Well, I think there's, in terms of utilizing technology, whether it be cameras, ShotSpotter, and otherwise, I think that's the right direction to go as a tool. But at the same rate, you've got to be out in the community. You got to be policing. I've not seen roads in my lifetime, and I was born here, with less enforcement on the roads. ATVs without license plates, riding recklessly, cars that aren't, So I think there is a bit of a disconnect there in terms of not just, some of the violent crime rates and things that we're trying to address. We got 12,000 cases in our judicial system that are backlogged. And I was happy to see Judge Francois was, she actually married me. But I think there is a disconnect because I haven't seen the morale. To me, the morale looks low at the police department, as does the visibility of the police. And they're critical employees. I know that we've got issues in recruitment. I know that we've had trouble getting recruits and getting our numbers up. But yeah, I think there's not the focus on enforcement that there needs to be, and visibility in the community overall.
Yeah. Speaking of Judge Francois being appointed, Kye, I want to go to you. Being an attorney, you are very well versed. You work every day with the judicial system, and you're in these courtrooms as well too. Speak to me on these nominations that we heard from tonight.
Well, Judge Francois for a long time has been one of my absolute favorite jurors. She moves her cases. She's thorough. She's fair. I was very excited to hear that she'd be moving up to the Supreme Court, and that the Supreme Court will now have a full complement of 5 justices, which it hasn't had before. I like that the governor has been tapping some younger members in the profession to take seats on the bench. We heard, Melanie Turnbull was recently nominated and is now serving in the family court. Renee Andre is someone who I also have an utmost respect for. And she has practiced in different areas. I've encountered her in my criminal defense practice when we've had multiple, had clients in multiple defendant cases. I've encountered her when doing bond work with the PFA, with her work with Jory Roberts, and to see that he's tapped another young attorney to serve on a bench, I think brings a lot of energy to the bench, a lot of enthusiasm, people who are going to be moving their cases. So I'm excited about both nominations, and congratulations to both of them.
All right. Now, is there any other topics that was discussed this evening, Kurt, that you think, maybe tickled your fancy a little bit, that was interesting to hear outside of the 1%, the taxation as well, too? We see now the merger of Casino Control Commission. We spoke about maybe a lack of things that we heard about, but was there anything else that stood out to you from this evening's speech?
As the first administration that passed a comprehensive land and water use plan and had it enacted, it is something to celebrate. I was a part of the team of consultants that pulled it together. I was hoping to hear some more substance around enforcement, because the plan is a really good general guiding doctrine, but it doesn't do well to get into specifics. So I really was hoping that we would have conversations about that. And in particular, because there are some of these recovery projects that go against some of the principles of the plan. And so as we talk about this recovery and rebuilding the Virgin Islands and consolidating of services and spaces and all of that, I really wish there's a lot more intentional action around adhering to the guidelines of the plan. So sorry, unfortunately, I'm much more critical about it than optimistic.
Okay, all right. Now, Usie, the governor made mention today that, we have the rainy day fund that has $10 million in it. I know you spoke about funding and really kind of having a real grasp of our expenditures, versus, what it is the territory's finances is. But hearing that, the overall debt was $2.2 billion, and that being down, I believe he said it was 25% to $1.6 billion today. Our debt represents 32% of our GDP compared to the debt of the United States, which is at 120% GDP. Hearing that, it it sounds like, oh, that's so much lower. But when we look at our population versus the population of the entire nation, is that something that's reasonable to really compare?
No, it's not an appropriate comparison. I think the subject matter of the budget stabilization fund, I think when making a comparison, you're pulling it out of context. It is exactly to do exactly what it says. Budget, stabilize with a fund. Mm-hmm. And so that once a fiscal year budget is being passed annually, and you may find that there is some incident, occurrence, or something that happens between a particular fiscal year that requires some funding to be earmarked to address the issue, then you have money set aside in what they commonly call the rainy day fund, which is the budget stabilization fund. So I wouldn't throw in that fund and make comparison with GDPs and the overall economic outlook of any particular jurisdiction or area. And so definitely not for the Virgin Islands.
Okay. Now, when I get final thoughts before we look to close out, Conn, give me final thoughts in a minute.
I think overall the governor did a very good job highlighting the successes of the administration, I think, which are a number, especially in terms of securing systems, whether it be GERS, whether it be run revenue. That side of it, I think he did a very good job. But I think as Kurt and we've talked about on many different topics, the feeling on the street when it comes to life in the Virgin Islands and some of the challenges with whether it be inflation and whether it be federal issues that may be outside of their control even, there's a difference in terms of that aspect of it.
Yeah.
But I think that one highlight that is very important is there's a tremendous amount of work that's been done to get those $23 billion that are going to reshape the future of the Virgin Islands as they're spent and as they continue to be. We're going to have all these new schools redone. That work is incredibly hard, time-consuming, and costly.
Okay.
To the government of the Virgin Islands, that was done over the last 8 years.
Yeah. Usie, final thoughts?
Well, my final thought, what I received this evening during the State of Territory address was what is expected. We are particularly now in a political year. I see everybody jockeying if it's the members of the body that may be running with this body. So everybody is all now giving these, what do you tell these accolades or criticisms or critiques of what is happening. And so I commend the governor. Yeah. I think his presentation was in fact expected given the time that he has served in the administration. He's right, and for once, and this was the first State of Territory address that he acknowledged that he stand on the shoulders of other governors that preceded him. This is the first time I've heard him speak to that, and I think it's important for all of us to recognize that a lot of these projects, these stuff started prior to him, but he's been able, in some instances, to get some of these things done and achieved.
Yes. They eat up some of both of y'all time, so I want to give y'all I want to give y'all some 40 seconds. Go ahead, Kurt. Yes.
I commend all of the employees of the government of the Virgin Islands working in whatever capacities, especially below management, because a lot of that work is done by people who come into office day to day, work in conditions that are sometimes dysfunctional, and they get the job done. And so I commend the people of the Virgin Islands for all of the good work that they do. And I look forward to a day and a time, hopefully in my lifetime, where Virgin Islanders live well at home.
All right. Kye?
I think what the governor made clear in his speech tonight is that he inherited the responsibility of the Virgin Islands that came with the disaster recovery effort, that came with COVID, that came with infrastructure projects that were slated and needed to be implemented. And when you look at the time period in which Governor Bryan has governed, he has done things to prepare for the future of our children, the future of our grandchildren. We won't see the schools finish this year, but the idea is that you will see the schools finish in a few years. You'll see the hospitals finish in a few years. And what he's asking the people of the Virgin Islands to do during this time period is bear with me during these periods of inconveniences, because it's coming.
That's all the time we have. It's been a pleasure sharing this evening with our panel here in the St. Thomas studio and with you at home. Please save the date February 5th at 8 p.m. for the premiere of the 4th installment of WTJX TV's The Governors, focusing on our 6th elected governor, Charles Wesley Turnbull. On behalf of all of us here at WTJX, I'm Marcellina Ventura-Douglas. Good night.
Are not necessarily those of WTJX, its board, staff, or underwriters.
Closed captioning of this program was underwritten by Perfected Claims, supporting access to justice for its clients and employment opportunities in the Virgin Islands community since 2021.